for the few people in attendance and the dozens who are listening all around the world. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, from his spare bedroom in Norfolk, England, Mark Laws asks you to get ready to fight fucking Monday!
Recording has started. James Duncan, welcome.
How goes?
Mate, I'm very good. How are you?
Tired? Overworked? No, very good, very good.
Little Dicky Bird told me that you were a mixture of nervous and excited about this life-changing opportunity.
Yeah, funny that, isn't it? Yeah, like I thought that's it. My name will be up in lights next to the great Mark Laws. So, yeah, it is. Yeah, I am nervous. I don't usually get that too much, to be perfectly honest. I think I'm a bit too laid back for that. So let's see what that brings out.
I used to say in the rugby changing room every Saturday that nerves are a good thing because it means that you care. And as long as it doesn't fucking derail your performance and you play like shite, which I'm sure you're not going to do, no pressure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I'm going to be on top form, Mark, all the way. I won't step a foot out of line.
Excellent. Mate, I start off with a quick fire round, but it's never quick fire. A little bit of a get to know you. I want you to imagine that I don't know, I can't think of a good way of phrasing this. Let's say if you happened to know that you had a minimal amount of time left on this planet, I want to know what the last thing you would choose to experience in a number of categories.
Okay, cool. No worries. We'll do that.
Basically, I want to know what your favourite things are.
Right. Okay.
So, what would your last meal be?
Oh, that's a biggie. Mark, I like food. If you saw me in real life, that would be painfully obvious. So what?
You can make it three. You can make it three course.
I'll go. I'll commit, and it's going to sound awful, right? Considering the sector I work in as well. But if me and my wife Sarah are going to have like an innie date, like we've got kids and all the rest of it, so dates involve the sofa and a takeaway, it's going to be a kebab.
Oh, what are you going? Lamb or chicken?
Lamb doner, garlic sauce, chili sauce, all salad.
In a naan bread or a pita?
Oh, a pita like that. Naan bread would be sacrilege.
Mate, I just sat forward on my chair. You've made me like I'm drooling. You can't beat a kebab.
No, I'll tell you what, it's not just like post pub food. Like it's good food. It's good food. I don't want to know what's in it. I'm not interested because I like eating it.
Yeah, happy days. Would you have like a little chaser on the side, like cheesy chips? You can accessorize.
I'll have my chips. I'll have my chips on a plate covered in mayonnaise because that would be my kryptonite. And that and a beer, and I'm an happy man.
Well, that's my next question. What would your last drink be? What are you washing it down with?
I'm trying to keep all decorum, so like my wife would know, and you probably got some idea that I'm known as beer snob. She would like some people would use a slightly different moniker on the end there, but I love beer, love a craft beer. So yeah, I reckon what beer it would be I don't think it depends on the time of year. Winter, stout, summer, IPA, sour, something like that. Happy days. But yeah, a decent beer sitting around about 7-8% ABV. Suit me down to the ground.
So you're not going to get a can of Tizer out of the fridge at the kebab shop?
Absolutely not.
Oh, okay. Lilt?
Always got Lilt in the fridge. So
happy days, mate. Happy days. Fair enough. What would be the last movie that you would watch?
Anyone who knows me will know, but Jurassic Park all day long.
I think that's my wife's favourite.
It's my favourite film of all time. It formed my childhood. That was me set to be a paleontologist. Clearly that never happened, but nonetheless, the passion still remains.
Absolutely. Who would be the last band or musician that you would listen to? Could be live, or it could be on a CD. If you grew up watching Jurassic Park, then you must have been a CD man. Although
Yeah,
you might have had a few, you probably had a few cassettes back in your early days.
yeah. Tapes into CDs. I think it's got to be Eminem. I've loved hip hop like most of my formative years into adulthood, but like I think that because he punctuates my teenage years in a way probably no one else does.
Do you know what? On that note, I can still remember, like vividly and specifically remember the first time I heard Eminem on the radio, and it would have been like someone like Zoe Ball or someone like that on Radio One introducing it, and I just remember it's like Eminem. It's like what the fuck? That's it's a little tiny little chocolate thing, and then this song came on, and I was like, what the fuck was that? That was incredible, and is one of those artists from that period of time that sort of takes me back very specifically to
Sure.
I can see myself sitting in like my mum and dad's drive listening to it.
Yeah, no, I'm there. Like you saying that, though, you talking about that vivid memory, and I think I just went straight back to I can't remember what year it was, but like whatever Christmas, and I got this. I'd asked for a stereo for Christmas, and I was hoping for something all singing, all dancing, and that wasn't necessarily what Father Christmas decided to get me that year. But it was a Man United stereo. Don't follow football now, but I was a big Man United fan when I was a kid growing up. So Man United stereo and a Marshall Mathers LP. And yeah, that was, I don't think my parents saw me much for the rest of the day because I reverted to kind of teenage stereotypes at that point and just be plotted up in the room.
Wanking to Eminem.
Behave yourself.
Oh, by the way,
okay, not quite the full stereotype, like the reclusive teenager stereotype. Yeah.
By the way, if you see my eyes drift up to the top right-hand corner, it's because I have got Man U Forest on the TV. So I'll give you an update of if there's any scores. Next question, and we're getting all a bit cultural. What would be the last book that you would read? And don't go choosing the obvious one that's going to give away the rest of the show to people.
Yeah, no, I won't. I'll stay away from that one. I'll say it, although I'd want to be selfish and have all three, but it'd be Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring.
Yeah, you can read all three. I'll give you the trilogy.
Yeah, if I, whatever reason it is, it's the last book I read. It extends my time.
Absolutely, by about a month.
Yeah.
I've never read a word of Lord of the Rings, and I've never read a word of Harry Potter.
See, I did read Harry Potter. I was an adult, but I thought I've got to read them. Like, and I love fantasy, so like it was good to read, and yeah, it weren't too sad. But yeah, Lord of the Rings is there.
Harry Potter's not my sort of fantasy. If you go on my Google search, that's not what comes up.
Fair enough.
What would be, or where would be the last town or city that you would visit?
Central London, all day long. I love it. Never get tired of I live in London, South East London, granted, but I never bore of going up into town, walking through London. Love it. Sarah's under strict instructions that when I die, I will be cremated, and she can oof me off Victoria Bridge when the tide's on its way out, and I can bob down the Thames, say one last goodbye.
Right. What a way to go. What would be the last hobby that you would partake in?
I'm a grown-up who plays with Lego.
Some Lego building.
I've got a partially built Ecto 1 sitting behind the screen at the moment. So, yeah. And if someone told me I didn't have much time left, I would want to see that complete for sure.
There we go. That's another month you've bought yourself. Jesus
Yeah.
Christ, you're not as silly as you look, are you?
No, not at all, mate. Not at all.
The last one. Who would be the last iconic person that you would want to hear from?
That is the question that has probably stumped me more than the rest of them.
If you've got like a top three, you can let me know what your top three is, and then I'll help you pick a winner.
Oh, I can't do it. What an absolute tool. See, I would have quickly answered because again, it's a childhood into adulthood thing, but it's probably slightly taboo now. But it would have been Will Smith.
You can have Will Smith.
Yeah.
I'll be honest. I'd probably bet my year's salary that whole thing was fabricated or staged. I still don't believe it was really. I don't think it was that real, was it?
It seemed a bit too calm after the event, I guess.
Yeah, it was a whole bit too bullshitty for my liking. But hey, what do I know? So Will Smith. Will Smith.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah. I'm gonna stick with that. Like, yeah. Again, just there's
Fair enough.
some who's a complete life.
If Will Smith's 10-year Oscar ban was valid in my Thank Fuck It's Monday intro round, who would your backup have been? Who were you tossing up between?
I don't know. Again, I'm trying to pick up on what you said, trying not to play my hand somewhat. But
You can play your hand if you need to.
yeah, but I'm not sure if it would be relevant for anyone listening, because I'm not sure they would have any idea of what I'm talking about. They have to be alive, yeah. Like that's
Not really.
all right. If it's not alive, and I could have some way of like skipping back and hearing from a time, it would probably be Abraham Lincoln. Being it's a leadership thing. I've admired that, read the biographies, like absolutely rate the man for a lot of reasons. Of course, there's some of the obvious, but like it was just an awesome leader. Well, I'm not entirely sure I need to hear from a leader if I'm going to pop my clogs anytime soon, because I guess that any leadership I have done or will do would probably be coming to an end at that point. But there we go.
But you never know. You never know. He might have some advice for you. Who knows?
Yeah. How to die well. What did he think about when that bullet hit?
Not a lot. Didn't even see it coming. Bastards. Thought they were my friends. Never mind. Right. So that is the very not so quick, the long-winded intro round, but at least we know a little bit more about you. Question one of my 4 questions, James.
Right.
Who the chuff in hell is James Duncan?
Yeah, so in the more philosophical sense, right?
Yeah. You can be sarcastic, and you don't have to be serious, but yeah.
No. Yeah, I guess
Not this question isn't as easy to answer as people think it's going to be.
no, it's not. It's not. I'm I guess I am a shy, introverted lover of people. Like I need to be on my own, but I'm at my best when I'm with people. I love people, their stories, and I live for it. And so, like, I suppose, what am I as a result of that? I'd like to think, or slash, I'd want to be someone who brings out the best in people. That someone who people can be themselves around, or who can learn that it's okay to be themselves. Yeah.
Good leadership traits.
Yeah, I'd like to think so. I'm not sure I get that right all of the time, but yeah, like I don't want to overread the custard on it, but I just love people and I'm passionate about them enjoying life and getting the most from it. Like that's, if I've learned anything over the years, it's to do that myself. Again, still learning. Try and weed out those toxic behaviours and tendencies. But yeah, I love coming alongside people and serving them in that way.
When you started that bit there, it sounded like you were describing me a little bit about being quite shy and introverted, but then almost like changing when you're in front of people and trying to, I don't know, whether you're trying to cajole them into doing more or being more, or whether you're, in my case, being like the class clown or the village idiot, but being ridiculously shy at the same time. And I almost, as I was growing up, used like fucking stupidity to mask how shy I was, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I get it. I get it. It's a contradiction, isn't it? Like, and there's a huge irony in it. But no, I do get that. It resonates. I've not necessarily gone the clown route, and I just with that shyness, like that kind of juxtaposition between that shyness and being like really comfortable of standing in a room full of however many people and talking, which I know obviously is a situation you find yourself in as well. Like those two things are like two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
If for me to walk up to you and not know you and start a conversation, I would find the most crippling thing ever. Like I loathe it. I'm no good at it. But as soon as, and I say, someone gives me permission to enter in and do that, and that permission looks like different things. Do you know what I mean? Whether that's the James, we want you to come and do this talk or what have you, or whether it's from a job role or something like that, then I feel like someone wants to hear from me, and then I feel like I can do it.
Yeah.
But until that point, I just can't do it. I was the kid. I don't know what you had when you were at school. We had the pips, which were like our end of class bell. Yeah, they were known as the pips. I have no idea why, but it was a big red box on the wall. And I used to get called the pips because if a teacher spoke to me in front of the class, I would just go bright red, clam up, and couldn't talk. And I guess I kind of put myself into that. I stereotyped myself there and said, like, I'm shy, I can't do anything like that. And it was only later on in life when I realised, actually, no, I can do X, Y, and Z, but I need something that gives me the confidence to do that. So yeah, I suppose as much as I want to be the person who comes alongside people, and I think I am for the most part, I also really am frustrated with myself, like that. Sometimes I can see it's necessary and I can't do it because I don't have the quote unquote permission to do so in that situation, which is, it's a peculiarity that I haven't quite got my head around yet.
And you probably don't ever need to get your head around it.
No, perhaps I don't.
Who knows? So obviously this isn't a health and fitness or a gym or a personal training podcast, but just talk to me about work and what you do, what you have done. I know I just asked you sort of as in who is James Duncan, the person, but just add into that sort of like what do you do, and just so people are aware. So we've worked in the same industry for probably the same amount of time. I think I'm coming up 17 years, something like that, and we crossed paths very, very briefly, working for the same company for a small amount of time before you moved on. But just talk about work and what you do, why you do it, how you find it, and all that malarkey.
Yeah, I mean, I love it. I love my job. I count it as a real privilege, and I've worked in the sector, like a similar amount of time as you. Come March, that will be my 18-year anniversary, which is, I don't know, it's good, but it's also it also reminds you that I'm 18 years older than when like I first started that. But yeah, that's a realization that one needs to come to terms with. But essentially, I work in what's labelled as the sport and physical activity sector. Started as a lifeguard working on a holiday park like when I was 18. That was fun. I was a different me then. It was not a choice necessarily. I'd been made redundant from the prestigious heights of carpet right, working in the back warehouse doing the cuts in the morning for all the carpet fitters. So I'd lost my job there, and where my parents live, it's a village in Kent. There's a holiday park in the village. And I went for a job interview there because they do that seasonal recruitment thing, and it was around February time. Went for a grounds maintenance because I thought, like, if someone gives me a edge trimmer and points me in the right direction, I'm sure I can work that out. Like, do you know what I mean? And being outside and moseying around, and then they interviewed me for that, and then they interviewed me for a lifeguard job and offered me that. So I needed a job, quite frankly. So I was like, yeah, crack on. Done my course, passed my course, and now I'm, as I say, fast forward 18 years. But so that was like working in operations, like mostly kind of swimming pools. So I'd left the holiday park because that really is a young man's game. You can't really have any commitments when you work, living and working in the same place. Like, it's not a place where, I would suggest, from my experience, where physical and mental health can flourish. Like it is.
Mate, I've been to Pontins, Camber Sands many a time, and yeah. I tell you that you're right. Yeah, physical and mental health are not in their finest places.
No, absolutely not. So yeah, I saw that back and then moved over working in leisure centres, carried on that, and then I moved into training. So like it's kind of lifeguard, first aid, health and safety, etc. Progressed from that. Tried it on my own. So I was kind of self-employed doing that. It was going all right. Then it didn't go all right because companies weren't paying my invoices. I will not name and shame. But yeah, there we go. You can see why small businesses go to the wall when you've given it a go yourself. I am not an entrepreneur in any way, shape, or form. Like, I love that term, intrapreneur. Like, I'll come in and I'll take risks on somebody else's dime. Like, not my own. I like sustainable income. I'm a bit risk adverse when it comes to that. But yeah, so I worked in learning and development. As you say, we worked together in a kind of a training company, and that was great fun. Love being there. And now I work for a large leisure operator as their head of people, HR by any other name. And that trend, and this is where I've learned more about myself, like that trend that's kind of run through there is just kind of the more I've enjoyed my role is because the more I've had to do with people, like whether that was like the customer facing side of things and seeing people building community and getting active and everything like that, seeing that as a really important thing, and then kind of then turning that inwards and like building those communities internally. Like, and as I said at the start, I love my job. Like, I've built a career out of nothing. Like, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I suppose if you ask me what do you want to do, I still don't quite know. But just working with people, supporting people, creating a good environment for people to thrive and flourish has been what's really motivated me, and I get to do that from a senior HR leadership perspective. So developing culture, developing people, supporting people, and things like that. So yeah, that's really what I've come to love, come to enjoy, and I think I'm good at it. Other people can comment on whether that is a correct perspective or not.
Well, I'm not Michael Aspel. I'm not going to start bringing people from your past out. And here's Janet, who worked with you at Butlins.
Yeah, she really hates you. But yeah, my whole career I'll describe it as luckless judgment. Like, it's been being in the right place at the right time and my outlook for a long time has always been to say yes. As a consequence, I am a qualified aqua aerobics instructor. I have never, ever, ever taught a class, nor will I. But if anything was ever offered up as an opportunity, I was like, yeah, cool, like let's do that. So I've always said yeah. So what I want to be able to do now is remove the luck and bring in the judgment for other people. Like to sell it as a career, sell the sector. This is a really good place to come. Like if it's non-academic. But there is aspects of it as well that are. So again, I think it's quite inclusive for everyone. Like, and you can build something up, and there's different trajectories to go off. So try and create an environment where someone can go, I can see a career there. This is where I want to go, and this is how I can do it. I know that now.
Yeah, there's a lot of similarities there with myself, but there's one glaring contrast between our two paths, in that I have never done an aqua aerobics qualification, but I have on several occasions taught a class. When I was duty manager at Bannatynes in Peterborough. So then straight away, if you're on shift and someone brings in sick, they're stuck in traffic, they can't make it in, rather than having 43 like old dears at reception in their bikinis complaining, someone has to teach aqua aerobics. And if you can't find someone else, you have to do it. So on several occasions when I was on shift, I had to take aqua aerobics. And the first time I did it from poolside for about 3 minutes. They didn't understand what I was asking them to do, so I just jumped in and literally fully clothed jumped in. From that minute, I had 25 old ladies like eating out of the palm of my hand. They just like fucking loved it. So then like any time I had to cover, they didn't really care, because it was just fun. But I've never done a qualification in it, but I think I nailed a couple of sessions. But that philosophy of saying yes, like, most people will probably be aware of the Richard Branson saying or quote of just say yes and then find out how afterwards. And that's kind of definitely like the first probably 12 to 15 years of my career was saying yes to everything, which then allowed me to earn the right to be able to say no to the things that I didn't want to do. So if I didn't want to do stupid early sessions or stupidly late sessions, or if someone was trying to barter me down from this price to this price, I'd earned the right to say no, because for so many years I'd said yes. I had so much experience and I had such a range of skills of doing my job that I had become so much better at it that I could then afford to be a bit more selective in the type of people I worked with, or the days of the week, or the hours of the day that I worked in, which has helped me massively. And there's thing that you mentioned there about what you do and the sort of like the things that you do on a day-to-day basis. And there's like this is called the TFIM show, thank fuck it's Monday. And that phrase first came about because I had a brilliant weekend, went into the office on the Monday morning, and everyone in the office was complaining about how shit the place is, how shit the job is, how far away the weekend is. And they 9:30 on Monday morning and they're already moaning and counting down to Friday. And I was like, well, I'm sitting here thinking, thank fuck it's Monday, because I love what I do so much. These poor people hate what they do so much that what sort of impact or knock-on effect is that having to the rest of their life? So the complete essence of this whole show, formerly the blog that I wrote a few hundred times, is about getting people to love to do something that you love so much that it doesn't matter whether it's Monday or Friday, because you enjoy it. And you talked about there before that how you have this love of people. That's the thing that you love, getting more out of people, helping people to improve their performance, or to like extend their career in some way, you get a buzz out of boosting other people and helping them. So it makes sense that you then do a job that where somebody will pay you to do that. There might be another job that will pay you 5-10 grand more, that might be tempting, that some of your friends might go, oh well, but that one pays 10 grand more, therefore that must be the best job.
Yeah.
Well, it might be the best job if the only way of measuring it is how much money you get in your pay packet each month. But what if there's other ways of measuring what is the best job for you? And that's going to be different for all of us. It sort of it's exactly what, as a teenager, my dad said to me. He's like, I don't care what you do for a living. He knew that I was a bit thick, and that just because everyone else at my school went to Oxbridge and did medicine or law, I think he was quite confident that wasn't going to happen for me. So he said, I don't care what you do for a living, just make sure you enjoy it, because you've got to do it for 50 years. And that's what I did. I thought, well, I like PE. I love PE. So I fell into sport and fitness and coaching, and have found a way of then earning a living doing that, if that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense.
It sort of, I don't know if it upsets me or if it annoys me, if it angers me when I see people that have maybe chased a salary, or they've chased a company car or a free laptop or whatever it is you get, and they've chased another perk, some other sort of way of measuring their career as a benchmark for what is good, and actually they probably fucking hate what it is they get paid to do.
I've talked to too many people that have earned a lot of money doing X, and they've reached the end of it too soon, because they don't enjoy it. They're not fulfilled by it. Like, I love, Simon Sinek's Start With Why. Like, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you're doing it. Like, and it's asking what is that why? Like, and it might be financial. Like, genuinely, if that's something that really motivates you, then yeah, crack on, have at it. Like, that's not a huge motivator for me. Of course, I go to work to earn money. Like, I would do something else if I didn't have to. Like, but that's not my primary motivator. Like, that is, we talk about, you've got Maslow's hierarchy, if anyone's familiar with that. Like, once I've earned enough to live the life that I've kind of, I desire for myself and my family, then the other things then begin to matter more after that, once you've got that. And I've always just had this principle, I say always, like a long time I've had this principle of, I am at work or thinking about work for the vast percentage of my waking hours in a week. So I need to love what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Like, there is no separation between me and work. There's not work me and home me. Once upon a time there was. As I've matured and thought about things differently, I've realized there's I am just one person. So, like, me being able to enjoy that, to have friends at work, people that don't have friends and merely talk about their colleagues. It's not that you have to be friends with everyone. That's not my point. But building good relationships with the people you work with, for me, is greatly important, because that's part of my enjoyment. Like, so if I can't do that, and I'd say it to anyone, if you can't find that enjoyment, bugger off and go somewhere else. Find something else that motivates you and gets you out of bed in the morning. And I just love, just from it's a kind of just something I noticed because I've worked in L&D and people stuff, like the psychometric testing, like DISC, like whether you're kind of high compliance, high influence, and so on and so forth. One, if you do any profile on me, it always says that, I should be in a people-facing role where, like, I'm working with people. So, like, I guess the science backs up my own subjective opinion in some ways. But there is one personality profiling, and it gives you a work mask and a you. So the work mask is, what are you like when you're at work? What are you trying to portray when you're in the workplace? And once upon a time, those two things were disjointed. My most recent one, which was a good few years ago still, I was so blown away by it, and I won't forget it because it was really impactful. And my work mask and my normal self were nigh on identical. And what that told me is I'd finally got myself into a place where I'm comfortable with who I am. And I am, as I said earlier, a moment ago, I'm just one me. So you don't get a different, I'd like to think anyway, you don't get a different James at work than you do at home. Like you just get the same James.
And
Yeah.
from looking at that from one perspective, you could see that as a negative if it means you're taking your work home. Therefore, you're not switching off. You're not giving your family attention. You always got one eye on your emails, checking Teams or conference calls late at night or whatever, replying at 10 p.m. That's a bad thing. But say, no, I'm not taking work James home. I'm taking home James to work.
For sure. Yeah.
This is me. This is the way I am. This is the way I like speak with my friends and my family. This is the way I play with my kids. This is my manner and my demeanor. And I'm so comfortable with that that's how I operate at work, taking my home James to work. Does that make sense? Which is
and it makes
a positive.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, of course, I've got some of those unhelpful behaviours that are coming the other way, but I need to be aware of those, be accountable to my wife and all the rest of it, and work on making sure that there's enough balance in there. But yeah, I think you're totally right. Like, it is about me going to work, and that took a long time. Like, that took a long time for kind of go past that imposter syndrome and all the rest of it as you start progressing in your career. If other people who are listening to this have had that experience, you say, lean into that, push into that, get to the other side of that, and get to a place where you are confident in who you are. And yeah, you take yourself into work. Like, a guy I work with keeps mocking me. He was like, James, the guy who doesn't know what a pair of shoes is, because I'll be wearing like a pair of, I love trainers. I've got lots of trainers. I'm not going to make too big a deal out of that, because I'm sure my wife will listen to this. So let's not draw too much attention to it. But I think, like, I love it. They're like in some low brow way an expression of me. And well, I dress how I dress. Like, I'm not going to look like a tramp at work. Like, I am wearing joggers now. I won't wear joggers when I'm in the office, granted, but I'm still going to have me, like, and how I dress, and because we express ourselves through the way we dress and present ourselves, as well as the way we communicate and everything like that, right?
Absolutely. And I'm just sort of I'm thinking out loud here as this is unfolding, and there might be somebody, or there probably is somebody far more intelligent than me who could say I'm wrong, but I'm like, how easy is it to have like a split personality? Like, I don't think it's that easy. If you've got, well, this is how I am at work, and these are my traits, and I shout at people and I boss them about, and I get this done and get that done, and if you don't, I'm going to sack you, and that's my persona. And then at home, I have to be like a different me. It's like, one of them is the real you, the other one is fake. And when you're trying to keep up a fake personality, it's really fucking difficult. I've tried it in the past. It's really hard. Like, it, so surely the easier, the most simple option is, as you said, to just learn to be more comfortable and confident in who you are, and then find a way of taking that person into a work environment where they can earn enough money to keep the bailiffs away and to put some bread on the table and whatever else you need, rather than I need to change my character to play this caricature of myself that does this job and earns this amount of money, and then when I get home try to play a different person, which can be confusing both ways.
Yep, I totally, I totally agree. It is exhausting, like, and I dare say, maybe apart from an exceptional few, again, it's not based on anything but my own opinion. is we all go through that journey,
Mm.
but I don't think there's enough of us who are progressing far enough through that journey where we are actually being ourselves. And I guess that's what having gone through that, that's my motivator. How can I help people do that? Because if they are themselves, then they're their best, then they're at their best. And then you can then point yourself and take yourself into the right environment for you. Like if the way you are rubs up against a white collar office environment, don't bother. Like just because someone tells you have to, or as you say, because that's where you earn a greater salary or whatever it may be, then don't do it. What's the point? Like,
Yeah. What is the point? Which will take us very soon into like I'll put some meat on the bones and I'll tell you why you're a person of interest to me, and we can start to tackle some more in-depth issues. But what is the point? I was trying to have a conversation with some friends on WhatsApp, so it's not like a real conversation because you don't get sarcasm or banter or humor or anything like that, and you fucking said what? Whoa, that's not how I meant it. But one of my longest friends was hypothetically talking about his industry that he works in is currently going through a lot of strikes because of a lot of unhappiness, shall we say, within the industry. And he was sort of talking in our WhatsApp group about hypothetically leaving the industry and starting again in his mid-40s sort of thing. And here's one argument: that you should probably keep a secure job. You've got good salary, good pension. Yeah, there might be stuff to groan and mumble about, but you've got security. And then on the other side of that coin is, but what's the point in having security if you're unhappy? I'm not saying he is unhappy, but like, what if even if there's 1% of unhappiness, that can soon exponentially grow and get out of control quite quickly. So, sort of playing devil's advocate, I pointed out dogs just stood on Buzz Lightyear. Poor old Buzz.
Happy days.
Every toy in this house makes a noise. You probably remember that from when you had like little ones. But I'll move Moana out of the way. Everything makes a bloody noise. So I sort of pointed out, there's like at the minute in this country, I think I read somewhere there's something like 2,000 excess deaths a week, like compared to 3, 4, 5 years ago. Some reports were something like 500 a week, and then there was one as big as potentially 2,000 people a week are dying more than were 3 or 4 years ago. And I said if you could ask all of those 2,000 people what do they want more of, if they could have like an hour, would they want an hour of overtime? Would they want to earn an extra £100 for their pension pot? Or would they want to read their kids a bedtime story? Would they want to fucking go to the park? Would they want to have a pint with their mates in the locals? So I tell you what, fucking none of them would choose overtime, work, salary, like, so that they wouldn't. They would be, if it's possible, they will be kicking themselves that they died without having spent more time doing stuff that isn't work, chasing money, etc., etc. And the caveat to all of that, because I find myself doing this a lot, 100%, I'm not anti-money, I'm not anti-rich people, I'm not anti-entrepreneurial or successful people. Like, if that is what you want, not a problem. But what if it's not the be all and end all. Yes, there's a spectrum, and you can have too little. And if you can't even afford to put your heating on at the minute, and you're literally queuing up at a food bank, of course, money is important, and you need a bit more. But there is a point whereby, what's the fucking point?
No.
What really matters?
No, I get the point, and I agree with the point. Like, and yeah, we pedestal things. We're really good at it. Put things up in this place that they don't belong, and it's not that they've got no purpose; they just don't have ultimate purpose. And it's about finding out what that ultimate purpose is, I guess.
Which brings us smoothly into like the next part of our conversation, like probably the more serious grown up part of our conversation. Although I will try to lower the tone as much as possible at any opportunity. Don't you worry about that. Your Instagram handle, your Instagram name, what is it?
Beers and Bibles.
Beers and Bibles. Okay, so the reason you are of interest to me, and it's not just because you like your craft ales and you've got a favourite beer for every fucking season. Jesus Christ, I'm drinking whatever was on like 2 for a fiver in the co-op. So you're into your beers to a greater degree than I am, but also in the nicest possible way, you're a Bible basher. You're the God Squad. Like,
Yeah, I'll
but
say that.
but you've probably been called worse. But you're and don't take this the wrong way at all. And this is my like, and I'll be as honest as I can with my religious stance and how it's changed over the time. But you're fucking cool. You're like fucking Tom Hardy. You got like your cool like Cockney-ish accent, and you tattoos down to your fucking wrists, and you like beard, and like you're a fucking cool guy.
I knew I liked you. I knew I liked you.
But you don't look, and I'm going to embarrass myself here even saying it, but you don't look like the typical like overly religious type of person, and that's probably my naivety and my 100% my ignorance. But you don't look like a Bible basher, and I probably won't use that phrase again. That's twice now. That's three strikes and I'm out. So before I ask you a question, and I'm probably going to ask you some questions that don't even have answers.
Yeah.
But my experience of religion from school, I went to like a normal school. A lot of people might have been to like a Catholic school or like Church of England or something like that. We sang hymns at my primary school, but there was no association between what singing the Lord's Prayer actually meant. It was just words on a page. So then when I went to secondary school, my grammar school wasn't religious in any way. We had like an RE or an RS class like once a week for the first 3 years, but it was nothing other than it was probably on the curriculum and you had to tick a box, and we just sat and fucked about and sort of did whatever like in the lessons. I think I got like 19% in one exam one year, which was like an all-time low for my even by my standards. That was pretty low. So as a teenager, and then definitely through my 20s, probably even into my 30s, I would have 100% been anti-religion. Not in a way that I disliked somebody just because they were religious, because I wasn't like nasty about it, but I would have said it's a load of bollocks. What, man in the clouds, fucking God, and he talks to people? Bullshit. Come on, like that isn't true. Like, what, snakes talking to people? Come on, for fuck's sake. Like that didn't happen. And another one of my arguments would have been along the lines of, let's say most of the juicy stuff in the Bible is 2,000 years old, yet handwriting is only about 500 years old. 500 years old. So we've potentially got about 1500 years of Chinese whispers that then someone wrote down that was based on he said, she said, he said, she said. So
Yeah.
what are the chances of it being accurate? Like, and I'm sure you've heard all the same and more. But that was my stance. I didn't dislike somebody if they were religious. I didn't think someone was an idiot if they were religious. I was just a fucking clever dick, and no one's going to tell me that religion is a thing. Like, here's another one that I used to think all the time, is that how many different religions are there? Probably thousands. Let's say there's 100 religions. Let's say if there's 10 really common, like the most common 10 religions, I'd be like, well, if one of them is right and is what they say is correct, then that means every other religion is wrong because they all think different things. So therefore, to my stupid inbred brain, that means all of them are probably a load of shit. And that was my stance for decades. And I wouldn't say I had like I've changed, and I haven't I'm not like I don't know, like a born again Christian or anything like that. I'm still wary, but this is why I want to talk to you about it, because I want to sort of like understand my own thoughts and feelings a little bit more. But coming up to almost exactly in 6 days' time, it'll be the second anniversary of my sister's husband dying. So he was 31, had 5-6-year-old son and a 12-13-year-old stepson. Died of COVID, sort of smack in the middle of the lockdown. There was the month of February 2 years ago was like the absolute peak of the deaths, like over 1,000 people a day dying, and sadly he was one of them. And I sort of, that didn't turn me religious, but in the sort of the days and the weeks after that, where we're sort of trying to pick up the pieces of like selfishly myself, and like my sister and her boys and the rest of the family and stuff, like we planning for the funeral, and I had to read I volunteered to read at the funeral and stuff. So I would go out and walk and go for runs like every day just to sort of be on my own and to think. And I started to sort of almost had like an epiphany where I was like, I think I get it. I was like, it doesn't matter if this religion thinks that everyone dies and comes back again, and then they die and they come back again, and they die and come back again. It doesn't matter if I think that's bollocks, if it gives them some sort of comfort, and if it helps them to live their life better because they believe in something, then it doesn't fucking matter what I think about it being a load of shit. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's like if it doesn't matter if I think it's impossible for the sea to literally part so people can walk through, that's bollocks. That physically can't happen. But if someone believes that it could, and that belief gives them some sort of comfort that helps them, whether it's with grief or whether it's with positive things, whether praying for them, even if it does fuck all, it doesn't matter if it's the best placebo in the world, because it gives them something to hang their hat on, and it gives them something to rely on and depend on. Does that make sense? I don't know if it even makes sense to me.
It does make sense, and I guess that's the who was it? Like Nietzsche. It's like the opium for the masses. Like, and I kind of get the point. Like obviously there's like chunks of that I would want to look at from a different perspective, but like I get it, and I mean at the very least there's a tolerance, and yes, I think like religion in most forms would be at its best, if not true, pastoral in nature, like the comfort, the security, the purpose, etc. like, and before you look into the detail and the claims of a particular faith or way of living. Like, absolutely. And of course, I would say my faith entirely brings me all of those things. Like, it brings me comfort, like it brings the security, etc., etc. So yeah, I would pick up and hold on to like a chunk of what you're saying before we then look to the detail of what, as I say, what a particular faith, in my case Christianity, like would be saying about itself.
Yeah. So what about, but you said like sections or chunks of what I just said that you would look at from a different perspective. Like what would some of those be? And like in the small print, that was all coming from the 15, 20, 25-year-old Mark, who was a complete fucking moron. Now I've graduated to just kind of being a semi moron, like a Tim Henman unexpected semi moron. I'm not quite as bad as I used to be. So my thoughts have changed a lot. But yeah, if there was any particular bits in there that somebody with your understanding or your beliefs would find fault in or would challenge.
Not fault. I think for what you articulated, for me now, it is a cliche, but I think it just helps illustrate a point, right? So I think you would find, if you were looking at, I don't know, so we call it Christian apologetics, right? So like the defense of the faith, you would find people probably using, as I say, a cliche of talking about a God-shaped hole in people's lives, right? From a Christian perspective, is that we're separated from God from a particular perspective, and that there is and I think I would have probably held on to this before I became a Christian, because I wasn't raised in the church. My I suppose my experience was the same as yours, in many ways, hymns at school and so on, and RE at secondary school and whatnot. But so I had no faith until like early adulthood. But for this idea that, I think if you talk to most people, apart from like the most like vehement atheist, which I think to be a true atheist, one has to have a considerable amount of faith, ironically. But yeah, unless your worldview is that, I think most people are of the perspective of there must be something more than this. Like, and what you articulated is, I think there's something more than this, but it kind of doesn't matter like what that something more is if it does you good. And I want to endorse that, but I guess from my perspective and with with a Christian worldview, like I can't fully endorse that. Like I kind of want it to be true, because I want people to be comforted, but I would be remiss and lying if I suggested that if I suggested that one could find that true comfort outside of the Christian gospel. The news as the good news as you find it, as the story unfolding through the Old Testament into the New Testament, because like I am entirely convinced, unsurprisingly, that is the truth. Like, the truth is not subjective. The truth is not what I determine it to be. It's what God Himself determines it to be.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess that's probably. I mean, we can go on and unpack that, like, but that would be the starting point. Yes, I agree with your premise almost entirely, but I would have to come back to, it's not what I think, it's what God thinks.
Yeah. Because you have got a horse in the race that you've backed.
I guess using that analogy,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, well, you've got a team. I support this team.
yeah,
Therefore,
absolutely.
I don't mind if you support that team, but this is my fucking team. This is the best team.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe a crude analogy, but I can do worse if you need me to.
But yeah, no, I think that articulates it well enough. Like that, yeah, I would be undermining my entire faith if I suggested that there was any other way.
Yeah. So you're not going to tell me to sort of give Sikhism and Buddhism a go and see if I prefer Christianity. Like, that is the way in your eyes, and I'm not disputing that in any way, what shape or form at all. Like, it interests me, and like it fascinates me almost. And so I suppose on that note, you're probably too polite. I'm just gonna let the dog out. Hey, go out there. You're probably too mature and too polite to sort of to say that is wrong and that is wrong and they're fucking idiots. But would you if you look at Sikhism, Buddhism, Islam, whatever the other more popular religions are, like, do you look at them and are there elements that you sympathize with or agree with, or is it?
I sympathize with. I guess I get to a point where I'm thinking, because if I start at that place that you articulated of whatever, again, however you would articulate it, but from the way I put it is there must be something more. Like there seems to be this innate knowledge, desire, etc., for there to be more to life than this, as it were.
Yeah.
So there's a sympathy in that we are all looking to fulfill that need to answer that question, and that's where some people find it in sport. Like you talked about football teams, like I mean, like if you want to see worship, go to a Premiership football match on a Saturday afternoon, and you'll see it, right? Like there is that we're built for something. So there's a sympathy there. There's, as I often find, the way people articulate their faith that's outside of Christianity, like whether, as you say, one of the other major world religions, is that I guess it hangs heavy on me that sometimes it's like you're looking for what I was looking for. And there's principles in which are saying, like, it feels like you're so close, but there's been a distraction along the way, and you've looked elsewhere. And I just I want you to come over here, but there is nothing. Like if from a Christian perspective, like it's choice, it's free will, like it's not something you cannot. Theologically, I would hold that one cannot be a Christian for anything but choice, like a decision to follow Christ. Like it's not people still talk about this. You see right-wing idiots saying, this is a Christian nation and we can't. We're not. We're absolutely not. I don't think anyone.
Like
there isn't a nation that can
lowest numbers that. Ever, are we not?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you can't claim that. Like, even if that wasn't the case, even if everyone, you can't say we're a Christian nation because it doesn't make sense. Because then you're defining it by virtue of the fact I'm born here, I am this, and that is not the message of Christianity. It's Jesus' invitation, as you read through the Gospels, to say, "Come, follow me." So that is invitation and active participation, like a desire and decision to go, and I'm going to take you at your word. I'm going to believe who you say you are, and I am going to put down my life accept yours and go your way. So as much as I want that for other people, in some ways I can't do anything about it. I can, of course. I'm a preacher. Like that's what I do. So I'll tell you about it. Like I'll try and live that life as an example of it. I can't make you go that way. So yeah, if people with another faith and stuff, like I feel like sometimes you can get so close, and yet you're so far. Like you can't get close enough until do you know what I mean? It's you are or you're not. I guess.
Do you or would you accept that if this was a three-way conversation and we were speaking to someone who is like an absolute devout, insert religious name here, let's say they're Buddhist, would you be happy with the fact that they would probably say exactly the same thing about their religion and they just want you to listen to what they've got to say?
Like how could they not? Like I would.
You'd probably be disappointed if they didn't.
Yeah, exactly. And I suppose I live for that in some ways, like whether and actually even within kind of, I don't know, like Christian debate, like why do you hold that view? Like I want to hear you articulate that and give me, in my humble opinion, what is credible evidence for it. So yeah, I wouldn't expect at all someone to back down from their position, because I'd be thinking, well, then you don't really hold that position. There's a difference between that and being open to listen, and like that one can listen and be, as I say, open without compromising their position necessarily.
That way of thinking is the complete antithesis to the way most people conduct themselves in most situations. Because if you look in any Facebook forum or social media post and the comments that come along at the bottom, never in the history of social media, which albeit is probably only 10-15 years, but never in the history of social media has anybody ever written their opinion and then 3 comments later said, that's a good opinion that was different to mine. I think I'm going to change my mind from now on. Thank you for pointing that out to me, James. Do you know what I mean? No one has ever done that. People don't want to hear your reason for thinking what you think. All they need to know is that you think different to them, therefore you're a fucking idiot. And no matter what you say, and I have this with some of my fucking closest friends now, I make jokes about it, but I could sort of say to them that the grass is green and they would fucking find a problem with that sentence just because they have to disagree with me on everything because they disagreed with me on one thing. And like, maybe I'm the fucking problem, but I think the problem is people don't challenge what it is they think they know enough. They don't open themselves up to a debate, because if you really get into, I love fucking arguing. I love debating, and I will never argue or debate anything if I don't know what I'm talking about, or maybe take that back, if I think I don't know what I'm talking about, like bleeding radiators or fixing something on a car, I'm going to stay silent. Talking about professional football, rugby, or anything gym related, I've got a fucking opinion on it because I've lived and breathed it, and I'm going to share that opinion. And if you've got an opinion on it, I'm going to happily go toe to toe and debate you on that topic, because I've got a fucking lifetime of, I'm going to give you all of my experiences and all of the things I've seen and heard and the people I've worked with, and all the things I've seen with my own eyes. I'm going to give you all that information. And if your side of the story is what you read in the Sun newspaper or what Dave said down the pub, you're not going to want to debate with me. It's easier to just go, oh, you're a fucking arrogant prick. You think you know everything. And then hate me and hate everything I say because you're not willing to debate because you're probably not that confident in the things that you're talking about.
That's exactly the point. And like, if I'm going to place my trust and confidence in anything, kind of unwaveringly, as it were. Well, not unwaveringly, that would be incorrect because that would suggest I don't waver, which isn't true. But if you're going to do it, it has to stand up to scrutiny. Like, if I believe anything at all can stand up to scrutiny, it is the truth of the faith in which I have placed my trust, my life, whatever into. So I'm up for, like, hey, you said at the beginning, like, you're never going to offend me. Like, there's nothing that you can say, like, unless you're trying to be unnecessarily offensive, in which I will take offense to because that's what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
But I'm never going to take offense. And I can always have a conversation with you about it. I might not be able to answer all the questions. Like, I would not profess to do that. People with bigger brains than me still wouldn't be able to answer all of the questions. But, like, it has to be able to stand up to scrutiny. Like, so let's have a conversation about it. Because, yeah, if I'm going to get unnecessarily defensive about it, I probably need to go back and understand really what I'm professing in the first place better. I think, when you talk about it like this, whether it's wrong or right, you look in the New Testament, you've got the Apostle Paul, right? He was this guy, awful guy to great guy, wrote most of the New Testament, well, the percentage-wise, considerable amount of it. And he says in there, and I'm paraphrasing somewhat, like, and if I'm wrong, or if we are wrong, we're the biggest fools on the planet. Like, he's obviously writing that from a position of confidence in his God and the faith in which he.
Yeah. He's pretty sure he isn't wrong.
Yeah, but at the same time, he's saying, and my word, if I am wrong, I'm not just a bit wrong. Like, I'm entirely wrong. Yeah, I'm entirely wrong. So there's an awkward humility in that, because obviously he's suggesting that he's not wrong, because otherwise he's bought his life on a lie. But there we go.
I have, mate, in 2007, I started an internship at Castleford Tigers rugby league team, who are top flight rugby league team, and the first thing that my mentor asked me to do was to write a program. He's like, I want you to write a gym program for a 17-year-old academy rugby league player. So I went away, I wrote this program based on what I thought, like, read some books, some websites, looked at some other people's work, and I put this program together. I gave it to him. He took it off me. He didn't even look at it, and he gave it back to me and said, now go and prove yourself wrong. And I was like, what do you mean? I've just spent fucking 2 days writing this program. You haven't even looked at it, and you've sent me away to prove that my program is wrong. So I went away and I read more research papers, and I read more journals, and I watched more YouTube videos, and I changed bits. I was like, that version of that squatting movement is 1.4% more accurate if I change it to this version, and so on and so forth. And I was like, fuck me. I did what I thought was good, and it was all right, but I could still go away and not necessarily prove it wrong, but I could find a way of doing it better.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'd have just rested on my laurels and he'd have gone, yeah, fine, there's the players, do the session, off you go, I would never have got any better. But he sent me away. He's like, right, go and challenge what you've done. Is it as fucking good as it can be? And it wasn't. And I try and do this with PTs now. If I'm trying to tell a PT how to do something, like, let's say you're planning a circuit class or something simple, I was like, right, do it. Now rip it up. Can you do it better? Rip it up. Can you do it better? The first time you do it, it's really easy to find lots of things that you can make better. But if you practice that repeatedly for weeks and months and years on end, and by the end, you don't need to double check it. You just fucking bang out a program, and because of all of the errors, it's really fucking good.
Yeah.
And then you've got the confidence in how good it is rather than the arrogance in how good you think it might be.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, I do.
And that's how I earned my stripes from a work perspective. I'm still not the finished article. I'm still not very good. There's thousands of people that are better than me, but I'm so much fucking better always because that's constantly how I'm operating. But then I try and do that in life. And I'm like, whether it's, I don't know, fallout argument with the wife over something monotonous, and I'm like, right, what did I do wrong? Like, what could I have done differently? What could I have done better? How can I change? So moving forwards, how can I avoid that situation if parts of it were my fault? Not very often. It's mostly her fault. And she won't listen to this, so I can say that with great confidence, unless she's upstairs listening. But I'm like, I can then improve my ability in life by not patting myself on the back and saying, "Oh, well done, Mark, you were brilliant then. Everyone else is a fucking idiot." I'm like, no, what about if I go, what if I'm the fucking idiot? What if I'm the idiot? And what if I fucked up? And what if I challenge my actions and my behaviors and try and change them? It's going to make me a bit better. And again, I'm not perfect. I'm not the finished article. I fuck up colossally as much, if not more than anybody, but I'm so much better at thinking about things. So then if I'm having a WhatsApp chat with my mates or talking about rugby or football or whatever it is, if I say something, it isn't just because I've regurgitated some words and I've got fucking Tourette's and I've just fucking said something. I've thought about it so fucking much, and I've tried to talk myself out of why, if I say this, what's wrong? What would be wrong with that? These are all the things these are all the comebacks. And once I can bat them all off, and now I've formed my opinion, I'm really fucking confident in that opinion. Sometimes it's going to be wrong, and it's not always going to be the best opinion, but I'm really confident in why that is my opinion, if that makes sense. I haven't just copied everyone else, go, oh, yeah, I agree. Yeah, great player. Like, no, I don't mind going against the grain if I've thought about things in great detail, which might not always be right, but
it's still the mature way of growing. And
it's all stemmed from challenging myself and trying to be wrong rather than confirming to myself that what I think is right, if that makes sense.
I see that kind of when you're talking about it, just reflecting there from a faith perspective, and I guess from a Christian perspective, I would see, obviously me, I was born again, so I've decided to follow Christ when I was 20. I'm now 36. Who I was when I was 20 and who I am at 36 are two very, very different people. I would say that I am no more or less loved as a result of that, but how I am now, my maturity has increased over that time. And I think from that perspective, and kind of maybe capturing some of the things that you were talking about from a personal life perspective, I've got the Bible, I've got the church, I've got God. I can learn what God has said about himself through the Bible. Now, something that really winds me up, and would say a lack of maturity, is, and I see it a lot in social media, of course, because that is it's the Wild West, and you can see the best and the worst of people in that environment. Is people, I say Christians, and I'm not labeling all, of course, who use proof texts. What I mean by that is that they take a passage of scripture and they use that to argue their point. Like, you are bad because of X, which is like, simplifying things, but I think that's generally how, like, unfortunately, how it's used. Seldom are they going, you are loved because of X. Like, I would allow proof texts. I would be a lot more generous in that sense, that if they were using it to those ends, and they use it, it's like, you are wrong because it says this, and because they've bought into a narrative because they've heard someone say it. Like, they haven't learned it, believed it, challenged it, like, had it go from here to here.
They're just taking someone else's argument, and that's now their argument, without thinking about
because this says this, and it's just like, right, what you're saying might be true. I'm not sure it should be delivered in that way, but we'll put that to one side for a minute. But let's just say that it's potentially not true. Does that stack up with what you know about God through the rest of the Bible? Well, I don't know. Well, why don't you know? Because I haven't bothered to look. Right. Well, let's start from there then, shall we? Like, there's, like, if we talk about things being in tension, like, two things that seem opposite can both be true, like, which I probably shouldn't go down that route at all. But if that doesn't hold up to the rest of Scripture, then you've probably misunderstood that. So, like, how do we understand that? I think you've got God within us, so that's what I say, like, the actual influence and living presence of God, the Bible, the witness of the Bible, but then also the witness of the church. We're supposed to be, as a Christian, I have to be in the church. I can't say I love God and not love His church. Like, that would defeat my first point of loving God. So what's the church saying? How are they helping me? Are they helping me grow? So, that's 16 years of being a Christian. It's 16 years of wrestling with the Bible, wrestling with God to a point, like, what am I understanding this? Am I getting this? Like, what am I missing out here? And also then having the impact of those around me who have walked longer than I have, who have either they've matched experience with what the Bible says, and they've come to these conclusions, and all of this influences me. So, as I say, I am not the same yesterday as I am today. My hope and my prayer is that I become more and more Christ-like as the days and weeks go by. So 16 years gives me a long time, as you articulated, of wrestling, looking at things differently and all the rest of it. My fundamental beliefs haven't changed, but the way I am, the way I outwork that faith, like maybe some of the more peripheral issues, as it were, have been challenged, and thinking about it a different way. And all of that has led to me to be more stronger, more full of faith, hopefully more obedient, and growing as an individual.
In that, what was the trigger? What was it that took 19-year-old James, who was not religious, 20-year-old James, who then was? What was what happened? What was the catalyst?
So, and this was something I had to wrestle with, because, like, I wouldn't blame you for thinking, when I first introduced it, but I met Sarah, who's now my wife, and I'd fallen in love with her, and she was a Christian. There's some conflict with her having started dating me in the first place, because we had opposing worldviews, and that could have caused real problems down the line.
Because you weren't a Christian.
Yeah, for sure. So it was out of, I suppose I was what we call it, agnostic. Like, so there is something more. I don't know what it is. I'm not that interested, but I'm not anti. Like, I do think whatever. So I was like, all right, I want to come. I want to come to your church. Like, I love you. I want to see what you're about, really. And I went along, and I found something that pushed against the stereotypes I had in mind. Obviously, you alluded to some stereotypes when we kicked off the conversation, right? And they exist for a reason. Like, let's own that. And I thought, if this is so wonderful, why do people look so damn bored? Like, I just don't get it. It's stuffy and irrelevant at best. And I went into that place. I was accepted. I was loved from the moment I walked through that door. I can't tell you how I knew that, but like I just knew that there was a warmth, there was a caring and a care and an interest that I'd never really experienced anywhere else. So I guess that started bringing down those walls. It started destroying those stereotypes. The Bible says, "Let the gospel itself be the only hurdle, like the only bump in the road," right? Do you know what I mean? And the church sometimes has done a good job at putting up some other hurdles in people's ways. So they started coming down, and then I was there. And as I say, like the reason I said I kind of prefix this with wrestling with it is because I wouldn't blame people for being cynical to say like I followed a girl into church and because I really liked her, I started doing it. But let me tell you, like if you accept,
we've all been teenage boys.
yeah, for sure. If you accept it, for me to like live as a Christian meant going against the things that I held dear and important, right? Like, and you wouldn't want to do that for a person. Like, it's nonsensical. Doing it for your God's different. So, and I just found myself there was a call to respond, and I was compelled. It was one of those kind of everybody heads down. If you want to kind of give your life to following Jesus, then stand up now. And I can tell you anything, Mark, like, and it might not make any sense to you whatsoever, but I did not want to stand up. I did not. I was like, I suppose I'm a. You've talked about it, and obviously I know you reasonably well. Like, I'm also someone who doesn't like to be told to do things, and I kind of push back against. I did not want to stand up, but I was utterly compelled to. There was something other. You know, I would understand what that is now better than I did at the time. And before I knew it, I was standing on my feet, wondering what on earth I was doing. And yeah, as I say, I made that decision there. There was something irresistible about doing what I did. And that's borne itself out, I guess, in both experience and understanding, like kind of each moment of each day thereafter. Yeah, so that was a change. Like there were barriers that brought down, and then I think I would suggest that when those barriers came down, God held out His hand and I took it because I could actually see it at that point.
As in literally, physically see it, or
no.
metaphorically?
Sorry, I'm saying metaphorically. Like
metaphorically, sort of could feel that it was there, and
yeah,
it got you on your feet, and you were in hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah, for sure.
Was there like a real quick steep? If you imagine like you've got a graph of your commitment or your religious beliefs. Was it like a real steep, sharp line that then plateaued ever since? Was it like real shallow, gradual line, or how does the sort of, what's the path look like?
It's a bit of a bumper. I would say that there was a short, sharp from where I was to this other place.
Yeah.
But I think I'm a bit intense, like as well. Like the things I want to do, like I want to do like well and can shoot. So I remember I got given a Bible that day. Like, I never read the Bible before, not really. And I went home and I was like, right, I'm gonna read the whole thing. I'm gonna say, Genesis chapter 1. Off I go. And I read that, and that's interesting. Lots of stories. You get into Exodus, lots of stories. And then you get into Leviticus, lots of law and rules. And then you get into numbers and there's lots of genealogies, and I was like, oh my goodness, what's going on? Oh, I was like, what? So like this initial head of steam that I had, like, so I'm going to do it. And was like, and that was like misplaced. I was going to be an evangelist. I was going to tell everyone about it. And like, there is just this like vim and vigor that comes off the back of it. But so after that, there was probably a bit more of a gradual, not a plateau, like still like a kind of a very noticeable, sustained rise. There's times when I've gone off the boil and all the rest of it, like, and I realise that I'm not in the right place. Like the disciplined habits that I've built into my life that do me good, because they are good, have like dropped away for one reason or another. Having kids, like when my eldest was first born, like it destroys all of your routines and everything that you've built up, and you have to rebuild those things. So there's a war, there's a fight for that. But no, generally, like, there hasn't been any significant plateau or what have you. So, and again, but that was not just because of me. That was because of the people that I had around me. Sarah's parents, who I love dearly, like it's been so significant. Sarah is my wife, obviously incredibly significant in that, and that constant, that accountability and that challenge to be like, are you growing? Are you pursuing? Are you being obedient? And yeah, like that keeps you. You can't do, like, if I know anything, you can't do it on your own. Like that is. I've been called into community. Like, I've not been called to be a lone ranger. Like, that's no one has. You can't do Christianity alone. Like, that's, the Bible's pretty explicit in it. Like, first and foremost, and then from experience, you would also realise why the Bible's therefore so explicit on it.
If the catalyst for you was Sarah, and I assume the catalyst for Sarah was her parents, from what you've just said. What was the catalyst for them? Like, have they come from like a long line? Is it just like,
no, not at all. Neither of them.
Right.
They are, so obviously a few decades back now. But there was this, what I'd articulate as a move of God across, like, young people, particularly like up and down the UK. Like, there was this, like, what's known as like a restoration movement, like the church coming back to being like biblically based opposed to traditionally based. Not that tradition, like, elements of tradition is a bad thing, but Sarah's mum decided to follow Jesus when she was a small child because she heard that there was a God who loved her. And she held that faith, although she wasn't in church and was not in a Christian family. And then in her teenage years, found a church that then nurtured her, and she grew up in. And her dad, I think, was probably relatively similar age, like early adult, like late teen, early adult, when he came to faith. But there was tens, hundreds, like, of young people, like, just in this area, that a lot of Southeast London that I live, like Bexley, who were having those same encounters, and were starting churches, like teens and 20s, like, we're going, no, they were looking at scripture, they were looking at their experience, and they were saying that these things aren't matching up, and they were what we would call planting churches, like starting new churches and new church movements, that and then like building that off. And there's, I'm part of a movement of churches. It didn't exist a few decades ago, well, 4 decades ago probably, but now worldwide. And it came from somewhere.
And is touched on earlier about, like, Christianity in particular, or just religion in general. I think, like, numbers are dropping or have dropped, or I don't know if it was UK or US. Like, US levels, especially Christianity, feel like they're a hell of a lot higher. It's a lot more common over there. But am I right in saying that the number of people who classify themselves as, I don't know if it's religious in general or if it's Christians specifically have dropped recently. I think that's probably new information from the census, which was
Yes,
done
it was. Yeah, it
last
was.
year or the
Yeah,
year before.
No, yeah, that was published not too long ago, wasn't it? So yeah, there is a decline in church attendance, which is something that's been known for a long time. And then yeah, the most recent census seeing the like a marked decline in people who would call themselves Christians. I don't see that as a bad thing. I think it kind of goes back, I was saying earlier about like just because you're born somewhere that you are Christian. And I think thankfully, and genuinely, thankfully, there is an authenticity. So there we've kind of gone, there's like a continuum, isn't it, where there was like, I don't know, like church attendance was high. Look at the Church of England, etc. Historically, over and even over like the early decades of the last century, and that started to wane. But people would still say, "I'm Christian," without actually being a practicing Christian. And I think we've kind of probably knocked past that center point now, where people don't just say they're a Christian because that's just what you are by default. Like, so I think that I would interpret, and there's obviously some studies that go alongside that it's more about people who never really had a faith, who are now saying that they don't actually have a faith and not categorizing themselves in that Christian place. Because like the evangelical church, which is I'd be part of, so a free church movement, so not kind of the established churches, Church of England, Catholic Church, whatever, is growing. Like the church worldwide is growing at a phenomenal rate, particularly in persecuted countries, in China and all the rest of it, where it's UK. Obviously, there is still freedom of religion and things like that. So we have other challenges, like we have, but there is, as I say, that evangelical church, which evangelical meaning like people essentially believe the gospels of Jesus and want to live their life like that way and express themselves in a particular way, is growing year on year.
And you say even like, so Christianity as a religion is growing massively in China, which I would assume to be like a predominantly like Buddhist. I know they've got like a lot of like Muslim regions, like the trouble they've got in the northwest, like the Uyghurs, and obviously they're very closely their neighbour with places like Pakistan and Afghanistan that have got strong Islamic beliefs, but Buddhism would be like the most obvious Chinese religion to my ignorant mind. Anyway, I lived there for 2 years. I lived there for 2 years, so I should fucking know. But but Christianity is growing in places like China.
Yeah, in like East Asia, Africa, South America, like parts of Europe, Middle East. So there's a phenomenal growth of, again, I'd say taking it at face value, because obviously I don't know any of these people as individuals, of like authentic Christianity, like people who are reading their Bibles, who are in regular attendance in like part of churches, like actively part of churches, and are active in their faith, that like a non-passive,
happy to label themselves as
and which is a big deal in places where that may well be illegal, and they're underground church movements and things like that in the Middle East and like in Islamic nations and whatnot. It's a pretty phenomenal thing.
That's fascinating to hear, that you would have like underground Christian places in like heavily predominantly like Islamic regions. Like I know Iran is like fucking tearing itself to shreds at the minute, and there's like, is there an element of people sort of going, hang on a minute, we've been sold down the fucking path here, we've taken it for granted, we were told this, we never challenged it, now we've got the fucking internet, we can see what everyone else is saying, like this is fucking bullshit.
Yeah, I guess so. Like, I mean, I'm taking this from an uneducated perspective. Like, so this is,
join the club.
yeah. So, but like from what I see, and I think, yeah, people are questioning. And again, particularly, again, I don't really know, so I wouldn't want to offend anyone by having stupid opinions. But like where you have like state enforced religion, like people have never, like you brought up not to question it, like you brought up not to challenge it. And although we haven't had, like in the UK, I don't think we've had state enforced religion, but there has been a case of you don't question it. Like, as I say, you're a Christian just because you were born here, like, and that's not true. And we're well past that. But there's probably a movement across these nations where people are going, like, yeah, I don't just have to swallow it because that's what I'm told, and they're putting their life on the line. So
yeah,
my question is, why are you putting your life on the line if you don't, you really, the church in the West is, I suppose, persecuted in some way, shape or form, like, but it's more from a belittlement. Like, they people are giving their life to follow Jesus in places where, like, yeah, you're really putting your life on the line to do that, or you're being cast out your family, like you're a pariah, like at best, at worst, you're facing imprisonment and death, and you think, like, wow, like you you really must have something going on there to do that, because it's not easy to be a Christian, as it were, particularly when you're facing that kind of level of persecution
in parts of the world where you're born, and this is the way you must think, and if you disagree, we'll chop your fucking head off. It's that simple. Like that to what I'm talking about, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes ago, about a WhatsApp chat where it might annoy me that someone isn't prepared to listen to my opinion on a particular player or team and to challenge what they think about that player, rather than just argue with me, to go to, actually, what if I question my thoughts on that player? Maybe I might have a different out. That's fucking meaningless. So, like, the world keeps spinning round. At the other end of the spectrum, you've got people who are brave enough to say, I might have been indoctrinated into this cult, for want of a better word, and I've been told for decades, this is the way I must think, and this is what I must believe, and there's no other way of thinking. And now I've got the fucking balls to say, actually, I'm going to challenge it. I'm going to question it and see if it holds up to scrutiny. And very quickly, I've found some flaws, and I think I might deviate my thoughts elsewhere. And you literally, it's life or death if anyone knows that you've done that. Like that is a fucking massive challenge of your, I don't know, your quest for finding out, or for making your own mind up on something.
Yeah. Like, there are, there's always consequences, and I wouldn't want to reduce the challenges that people face when they're not necessarily life or death challenges, because that's their reality, and just because it's not life or death doesn't mean it's a small thing. But nonetheless, when you're considering it from a life or death perspective, you just think, you really do believe this?
Yeah,
because you ain't going to choose that lightly.
Again, I'll chuck a little crass example in there somewhere. When you rewind a few months to the World Cup in Qatar, England and Iran, and you've got the Iranians are like, right, lads, we don't agree with what's going on at home, so when they play the national anthem, no one's going to fucking sing in protest. And someone must have said, do that, they might fucking kill you when you get home, and they might kill your fucking family before you get home. And say, no, don't give a fuck. We're not singing because we believe that what is happening is wrong. Harry Kane's going to wear a rainbow armband because he fucking believes in LGBTQ plus blah blah blah. Okay, Harry, if you wear that armband, you're going to get booked. Well, fucking hell, I'll take it off. Like, I'm not going to wear it. Go, well, how much did you really fucking believe in that cause that you were? How far were you really willing to fight for that cause? Oh, you'll get booked. Oh, all right, all right, all right. I won't do it. I won't wear it. Sorry. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's all right. The Iranians probably weren't threatened to be killed, but they must have been thinking this could go really fucking badly wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But I need to make this stance because I believe in what I believe in so much.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, yeah, is it worth it? And then you make that choice. You know, I mean, Jesus in the gospel says, like, again, a paraphrasing, like, you need to pick up your cross daily to follow me, which is, you know, shorthand for dying to yourself every day to do that. So this isn't easy. Like, this isn't. There's other analogies about a narrow gate and a wide path, like, and you're saying the narrow, like, I'm through the narrow gate. Like, this isn't straightforward. Like, there's I'm asking you to give everything to gain everything. Are you prepared to do that?
And most people aren't.
Yeah.
And also, I'm now never going to get Harry Kane on the TFIM show. No,
unless he wants to come in and justify why he did it. Like, as I say, courage your convictions and all that.
Never mind. I'll message his agent anyway, just in case. He might not listen to this week's episode, and I might stand a chance. I'm joking. He won't have any fucking interesting thing to say, will he? Mate, I've got one more little mini question, and then I'll move on to question 2. My mini, you said about 20-year-old James follows a fit bird into the church, and then all of a sudden he's never felt cared for. He's never felt love like it. Like, there's something happened as you walked in. You felt things that you hadn't felt before. Now, I'm not implying, I don't for a second think that you grew up in a cellar and your fucking family used to piss on you or anything like that. I don't think you were like terribly badly treated, but how was it different to sort of being at home as a child? Like, I'm sure you were cared for and loved, but what was the difference that you felt at that time? Does that make sense as a question?
Yeah, I guess in, like, there's two aspects of it, because there was the initial, like, as I say, that experience, that kind of, I don't know, that kind of physical reality of meeting people and them befriending me and loving me. That was, I guess, what was profound about that is because it was similar or the same to kind of love that my family had shown me.
Yeah.
So do you know what I mean? There was a familiarity there that I hadn't experienced outside of my familial setting.
But yeah.
Then there was the far more profound other love that was that transcends love, like, that is perfect. And it's just like this knowledge of just being held and kept and secure, and hearing that love that God has for me demonstrated through the sacrifice of Jesus. So much did he love me. And it says, I don't want to misquote, like, some people might die for a good person, but nobody gives their life for a bad person. And acknowledging the life that I had been living up until that point was not, it's not that I'm not good per se by a worldly standard. Like I was a nice guy. Prided myself in being a nice guy. It's not that, but like I was not honouring of God. Like that, if I did something well, it was because I did something well, not because that there is something inherently good in me that's been built into me. And having some really sketchy, basic, thin understanding that like Jesus demonstrating God's love by going to the cross and dying for me, it was just like, what? Like, that's outrageous. Like, if that's true, like that is the most scandalous thing, the most audacious thing that I could possibly ever imagine. Because why on earth would he do that for me? Why? Why am I valuable enough? It's because he loves me. And it's not because of what I've done. It's because of who he is. And you think, and like this just, as I say, I can, the way I articulate it now compared to how I'd have articulated it on that day, like very different thing. Like there was something that's more based in impression. Like, do you know what I mean? Like less kind of like art, intellectual understanding or a real knowledge or what have you. Do you know what I mean? It was just like this, like, oh, I can't believe it. And it was really like, well, if this is true, then I want to know him because he wants to know me. And it's all well and good for my parents to want to know me. They chose to have me, I think. So they say. But you know, they chose to keep me around and look after me and love me as they did, like and wonderful they were. But if there is a God who created everything, who's bigger than everything, that said, like, who's zoomed in, like, as it were, all the way down and come to, like, little old me.
Little old you, yeah.
Like, what? Why? It's big. It's because he loves me. He created us, like, and he wants to be worshipped because, like, that's his nature. Like, it's not like a self-seeking, self-serving thing. It's like we can do this together. Like there's this invitation. I'll pour my love on you. And I'm God. Like there's just like this is we're meant to be together. Like, do you know, like there is something profound. Like we are the pinnacle of his creation. There's nothing else, you know, as far as the Bible tells us, there is nothing else that, you know, God. So you read Genesis, it said God created heaven and earth. It was good. God created animals. It was good. It constantly, like, that's the pattern that it follows. God did this and it was good. He did this and it was good. And he created man. It was very good. And he placed his image. He created them in his image. Not like we look like him. I don't believe he has a physical form. Jesus did, but that's like another thing. That's another part of the story or whatever. But he's placed his, like, the capacity to love, the capacity to care and to be in relationship and everything like that. There's nothing else like that. I like us in creation, and you just think, whoa, what he's giving to me, I want to give back to him and more. And he's told me he wants that from me. Like, what?
On that note, what's the comeback to the clever dick who would say, well, God, Jesus created us all, why does he make complete cunts like Boris Johnson or Jacob Rees-Mogg and fucking Putin and etc. Like, what's the to the pretend I'm a complete ignoramus and say, what are they lessons to the rest of us in how not to conduct ourselves, or do you just, like, what's the?
I don't know. I think, like, without, like, if we're just talking a general sense, so I don't just start mugging people off. Like, if there are people who are like,
You're like paedophiles,
really obvious by
rapists,
nearly everybody's standards of being not a great person, like I think they're like helpful caricatures, like, because they're really and truly, like, there's aspects of the things that we've decided that we don't like in those people that we still have aspects of that, right? Like, do you know what I mean? You know, if we were to talk about people specifics, people don't like Boris Johnson generally because they feel that he's dishonest. I'm not entirely honest. Like, the people don't like Jacob Rees-Mogg because he's got bigoted opinions. Well, we've spent the last couple of hours talking about our own bigoted opinions and how we've got through those things. So I don't think, yeah, like, some people do some pretty heinous things, and like that, there's no way of justifying that. There is the problem of evil, like there is the problem of suffering and whatnot. But I think the Bible's pretty clear that the root of that is what we would call as sin, and that sin, by definition, as I would understand it, is idolatry, like the worship of something other than God, like where we've taken that, as I say, that innate capacity, that thing that's in us that should be directed Godward, and placed it into something else. And that's what's caused that fracture, and that the results of that fracture manifest themselves in different ways. And there is a relative morality, or even a collective morality, that says some of those things are better or worse than other of those things. God says all of those things are bad. And culturally, what we would say is absolutely abhorrent. Go to another culture and they would suggest otherwise, right? And so we need to be careful about getting kind of high and mighty on what's right and what's wrong. As I say, that's not me trying to spin off like someone who's a sexual predator is not heinous. Like that is not the same as telling a white lie, not in any way, shape or form. But there is still at heart a fundamental issue with the world, right? And again, that for me, this isn't from the Bible. Like, I have a problem with crying. Like, I cry. That's not my problem. Is like, why do we cry? And for me, like, I feel the answer in that is because we know it's meant to be better than this. Like, whatever's causing us to be upset is because we know deep down this isn't the way it's meant to be, whether that's because it's the loss of a loved one or what have you. So I'm really beating around the bush on this one, Mark, but like, we know that there's a problem. And I think the Bible tells us what that problem is. It also tells us what that solution is as well, that when Jesus died on the cross, he was the only person that never partook in that sin. And when he died, he broke that power, so that whoever accepts him and follows him has that's the forgiveness that's on offer. It's not that I'm now suddenly without sin. God, goodness me, far from it. Like, I'm tripping and stumbling every day. We all are. Every Christian is. Like, every person is. Like, but the point is like, I am accepting the offer of having that perfectness, that seal of approval, being counted to me. So I would be nervous about and reticent to say, like, these other people are all getting it wrong, because I think I could comfortably accept that I get it wrong as well. It might just not be as apparent as that, or it might be not as caricatured as that. So yeah, there are divs in the world. But
a polite way of putting it.
Yeah, I don't know. I probably didn't answer that question particularly well, but like, it is a difficult thing, and I realise. But fundamentally,
and I understand that it isn't. I don't expect it to be as clear cut, black and white. Like, an idiot would be like, see, you can't give a straight answer, so therefore, because there's paedophiles and rapists and Tories, that must mean that religion is a load of bollocks. Because it can't be true. Because why is there so many divs in the world? I think I used a different word, but that would be the easy way to just try and go, haha, I've found you out. whereas you've kind of, I don't know, you sort of talked around in a circle as you were trying to sort of explain it to yourself, that sort of made as much sense as it didn't make sense to me. If that makes sense, I kind of
I totally get that.
I get it, and I sort of, and I'm playing devil's advocate. I'm thinking, well, you're not just going to have this perfect utopia where no one ever puts a foot out of line, nothing bad ever happens. What does that teach you? Like, if you play in a football team and you win 30 matches in a row, what does that teach you? It teaches you fuck all. Like, you win when you lose, and you learn how to come back better and how to improve, and just winning teaches you fuck all, other than probably to have a rather heightened sense of like your own worth, which isn't actually true, and you can quickly get into the realms of arrogance, like by just winning. Like again, I go back to my very, very, very early on in when I had my foot in the door of professional sport. There was, I can't remember if it was like a sign, I can't remember what club it was at, but there was a sign up, training ground, changing room, inside the stadium somewhere, that was like, we never lose, we either win or learn. And again, I was like, fucking perfect. I read that and it just made sense to me.
Yeah.
So I'd had 25 years of my life where we won, brilliant. We lost, shit. We won, it's brilliant. We lost, it's shit. I was like, that was my life of sport. And then all of a sudden I was like, you never lose, win or learn. And learning is probably better than winning if you approach things that way. You by learning, you get so much more than just winning. And I was like, fucking hell, where's that been my whole life? It just makes sense. Now I can apply that to relationships, I can apply it to friendships, I can apply it to work, I can apply it to conversations. And if I think I can lose, that's gonna alter whether I have a go or not. Because who likes losing? No one does. So if I can't win, I'm not going to have a go. And I know we've all known people who, if they can't win, it's my bat, my ball, I'm going home, and they fucking go and sulk, and they only want to play if they can win. And I've probably been like that myself. But fuck me, imagine if you could take value from learning rather than just winning. Imagine how much more impactful that can be. And my point is, what if we do have some pricks, absolute bellends scattered among us who do terrible things? And what if that isn't society losing? What if that's an opportunity for all of us to learn from it and to be better, or for us to make ourselves better because someone else has fucked up? Does that make sense?
No, it makes it does make perfect sense. I'd say like there's also the conversely, that what we have got in Christ, in Jesus, is this is what life looks like. This is what real life looks like. When you look at him and you see, like, you read that through the Gospels, and he's not this airy fairy, like as you see in some like Renaissance kind of era paintings, like medieval paintings, like kind of like he hates the horrible stuff, but he loves people, like, and you think like, there's something more to this, right? And I think instead of where I feel more comfortable talking is not like why do these things exist, is actually saying that actually when I read the Bible, you take the Psalms, loads of poetry, like a big chunk of that in the Bible, right? and it's full of people like King David, who wrote a lot of them, saying, where everything's so awful, like why am I being persecuted, like this is awful, like where are you, God, where are you? And they kind of go through this flow, and it suddenly comes back to this point and goes, but God, like I'm going to choose to worship you, like I'm accepting, like the Bible's not scared of accepting that there's tough stuff that people go through, like, but it's about where do we direct our gaze. And we direct our gaze back to God and say, like, things aren't right, but I'm going to trust in you. And the good, like the purpose of the church is carry on the work that Jesus done, because God is saying, let us make the world better. Like, that's what our purpose is. It's not to be to be kind of wait until I die to go to heaven. Like, that is not what the Bible talks about in any way, shape, or form. It's about the renewal of all things, that God, through his people, he's making this world to be the place that he desired it to be in the first place. So the invitation is, come and be a part of that. Like, it's purposeful, man. Like, it's active. It's material and spiritual. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not waiting to be spun off. I ain't getting wings and a harp and sitting on a cloud at the end of this. Like, there is none of that in this, like none of that in scripture. Like that stuff's come in from like Greek philosophy and stuff, like that's kind of just been absorbed into thought over the years, like, you know, Dante's Inferno and like Plato and all this kind of stuff, right? That's not, pick out the Bible, you find something different. Like, I think God doesn't explain away the bad things. I guess he feels he doesn't need to. What he does do is say, there is more to life than this. There is something better. Come and be a part of it. Yeah. Hold that thought. My laptop's going to die. I just need to plug in.
No, you're all right, mate. You're all right. I'll sing a song or something.
Happy days. Sorry about that.
No, mate, you're absolutely fine. I'm just making a note of the time so I can I know where to go to trim that bit out.
Yeah, sorry.
It probably won't be the most interesting minute of our chat. Mate, I said I had one more little mini question before I asked you the next proper question, but I've had another one. This is the beauty of not. It always annoys me when I hear an interview. For a start, I don't like calling these interviews. I prefer conversation, because I want to talk as much as you talk. No offense, but I like, it's not just because I like the sound of my own voice, but I want it to be a conversation. I don't want to ask you a question and you give me an answer. I prefer conversing, which is a dying art, probably dying more so than the Christianity numbers in the census. But where do things like fate and things happening for a reason, like, where do they cross paths with religion or Christianity? Is it a load of bollocks, or is it like, is there, like, if you'd have asked me years ago, I would have said I'm an atheist. I don't believe in any religion. I'm a-religious. But I do believe. I believe in fate. I believe that things happen for a reason. Like, sometimes, like I have it. Like, the amount of fucking times I'll have it where I'm busting a nut to do something to, like, I don't know, whether it's to pay a bill or to buy a new sofa or whatever it is, like, and I'm fucking busting my balls and not getting there, and then at the 11th hour, every fucking time, someone will message me, go, I don't suppose, if I give you 500 quid, would you mind teaching a class at my gym, or something like that? Something that completely out of the blue will just come.
Yeah.
And I, even as recently as like a couple of weeks ago, like the exact same thing happened where I'd been trying to raise an amount of money for something that we needed, and I was like, getting fucking nowhere. I'm fucking selling whatever I can for a fucking tenner here, 20 quid there, trying to fucking reach this figure. And then I went and I logged into Facebook on my laptop. Now, on my phone, on the app where I look every day, messages from people that you're not friends with don't come into the inbox. They go into like a hidden inbox. But when you log in on the website, you can see that website, that section of the inbox. It might just be my settings, but anyway, that's how it is. So anyway, I logged into Facebook on my laptop, which I never do, and looked at my messages, and then saw this other message, and I had this inbox, and it was from, like, I don't want to make it sound racist in any way, but it was from like a name that I could barely pronounce, which usually means it's some sort of scam from like a fake profile from some kind of like bot farm or something that just block, ignore, delete. For whatever reason, I opened this message, and it was a guy who had seen something that I was selling on Facebook Marketplace, and I was trying to sell it. I had it on for like 50 quid. I could have dropped it down to 40, dropped it down to 30. I would have sold it for a fucking pound if someone wanted it, because I needed that pound. Anyway, he'd messaged me. The guy lives in California, so he's not in my fucking Norfolk little vicinity where I'm selling it. So he'd seen this thing that I was selling, which is like a quite like an old school like piece of equipment, and he'd asked me. He's like, "Oh, I'm interested. Like, I'll buy it off you." And I was like, "Oh, it's clearly a scam." So I was like, "All right, how much? What do you think it's worth to you?" And he's like, "Oh, I'll give you 200 quid for it." So I'm like, 200 quid. And he's like, yeah, that's what it's worth to me, 200 quid. I'll give you 200 quid for it. I was like, right, okay. I was like, here's my PayPal. 200 quid pops into my account within minutes. Withdraw it into my bank account. And I was like, fucking hell. I was like, what's the scam here? There's got to be a scam. Like, what? I was trying to work out what it is. So then I package it up, post it over to California. No, he sends me the postage forms, because he paid for the postage through DHL. Print it off, stick it on, take it to the shop. It gets delivered. I'm thinking, what's the fucking scam? The scam's got to be that when it arrives, he's going to pretend it hasn't arrived, demand his money back. Then he gets my money and he's got the thing. I was like, maybe that's the scam. That's what's going to happen. No, he messaged me back. He's like, Steve, brilliant, thank you. Best quality one I've ever seen. The best packaging. He's like, I don't suppose you've got any other similar sort of things. And I'm like, as it happens, yeah, I have. I've got fucking shitloads. Sent him a picture of everything I've got. The next thing you know, he wants to buy the lot off me, 1,600 quid. So I'm like, fucking hell, what's the scam here? All right, it's a pointless story, but my point is, I was at the fucking bottom of the barrel, having bust my fucking balls, exhausting every avenue possible, and then from nowhere, this 1,600 quid lifeline came in, and I sat on the chair over there, and I was fucking telling Natasha, and she was like, "That always happens to you, like you." She's like, you fucking jammy bastard. It always fucking happens every fucking time. And I was like, and he started crying as I sort of sat there. I was like, I don't know. I was like, I think it's just because I try so fucking hard and I mean so well. And I might not be the best businessman in the world, and I might not be the best entrepreneur in the world. I try so fucking hard and I mean so well that something just makes it happen. Like someone throws me a lifeline, and I'm not saying that I'm not saying I think that's religion. I'm not saying I think it's God or Jesus or you or anyone else, but like it makes me think. I was like, what if I'm like accidentally religious? What if I am an accidental an ignorant fucking Christian without even realizing it? And what if I'm being looked up? What if when I walk the dog every day and I talk to myself out loud, what if I'm praying? Like, what if I'm fucking talking to God and I don't even know I'm talking? Do you know what I mean? I'm like, I sit there and I'm like, it can't be a coincidence that that story has happened every fucking time. It happens multiple times a week or a month sometimes, like literally hundreds of times in the 10 years I've been with Natasha. And she's like, fuck me again. It's happened again. That just when we thought there was nothing, someone throws me a lifeline. And I don't even know what my fucking question is, but like, is do fate and things happening for a reason, like does that fall within
Yeah,
Christianity, or is that am I
yeah,
just do
I
I need to
think
buy a
so.
lottery ticket?
No, I think so. I think sometimes coincidences happen. Like we don't have to find don't have to super spiritualize every occurrence. But yes, I do think coincidences happen. I think prayer, like when you bring these things to God, prayer is a very strange thing, really. That if God knows my thoughts and He knows what I need before I even know it, like why on earth do I have to pray? But it's that strange relationship thing again. Like there's an invitation to come and bring it to Him, and I think that's part of like that submission and like that trusting. Um, and I think it was like one of the former archbishops of Canterbury, and I'm probably not getting the quote quite right. It says. Like talking about coincidences and prayer, and he's like, when I pray, like by coincidence, I'm gonna have to look up the quote. I have a look up the quote yourself. It's like when I pray, coincidences happen, but like kind of by coincidence, when I stop praying, so do the coincidences. Like there's like perhaps there's actually something like in this.
You make your own luck, sort of type thing.
So yeah, and like obviously I do believe like fully like in a God who provides. Like if you look at the names of God that are used out, like one of those is Jehovah Jireh, which is like my God, my provider. And like I think it's James, the book thereof, says like every good thing comes from the Lord. So there is a matter of provision that comes. Like you, I could attest to many things. Like I think when I went part time, when I was talking earlier, and went like part time self-employed, part time employed. Like genuinely, me and Sarah look back now and they're like, I have no idea how I paid the rent, but I did every time. And there's a challenge in that, like to be more trusting, to be more generous, and all the rest of it, and maybe take like more godly risks more often. But yeah, so I think there are like literal coincidences. I think there are answers to prayer, and I think that God is a generous God who provides, so that we find ourselves in situations and loads, like it's almost countless. And also like God, I believe that God's given me faculties and a brain to think, and like hands to work, and so on and so forth.
The tools required to
go and do
stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So
before you ever knew you needed them, or
yeah, exactly. So there is still a provision of God, but it's like it's further back in the line. Like, do you know what I mean? But there has been the kind of like your scenario, the kind of quote unquote miraculous, like what? Like, how did that happen? Where did that come from? And why is it right now, like the time I need it most? So yeah, there's certainly a place for that, for sure.
Like where you said, where you were sort of sarcastically saying about, well, why do I need to pray if God knows what I'm thinking? Why do I need to tell him what I'm thinking? And as you were saying it, I was like, again, I'm playing devil's advocate. I probably shouldn't keep using that phrase, devil's advocate, should I? Sorry, mate. But playing devil's advocate, it made sense to me. I was like, well, let's say hypothetically, he already knows what you're thinking, but he needs to hear you acknowledge what you're thinking. He needs to hear you say it out loud, and he knows what you're fucking thinking. He knows what you're gonna do, but by you saying it is confirming that you've realised, like you get it, and that's like where you sort of say there about if I've been given a skill or a craft that gets me out of trouble, or in my predicament it earns me some money to pay for a thing that I needed to pay for, like that could still have been a God-given skill that he knew I was going to need it all along. That's why he gave it to me in the first place, so that I could use it to get myself out of shit.
Yeah,
if I needed to. Does that make sense?
Yeah, honestly, one of like the regular features of my daily prayer is part of my daily prayer life is like, Lord, like bless the work of my hands. Like like before I'm going into work, like bless the work of my hands. Like what I turn to, like equip me to do all of that I need to do, because I can't do it of my own accord. I need that. And as you say, there's that acknowledgement that it comes from him as well. I guess it's like one of those things. It's like, are you going to own that for yourself, James, or are you going to give me the glory for it? But the answer is, I'm going to give you the glory for it. I don't always do that. Like that's part of my growing and like my stumbling and like, do you know what I mean? And kind of being refined over time. I need to do more of that.
You're like, come on, surely that one was me. And he's like, no, James,
no,
that was me. And for fuck's
every
sake.
good thing comes from the Lord. Okay, right, no, I'm understanding that. But that was me though, wasn't it?
Yeah.
No, like, honestly, like,
no, James, when I say every, I mean fucking every, James.
He has patience beyond patience and a sense of humour. Because there's times where he's like, all right, yeah, go on in, and I'll go and fall flat on my face. So and I feel it, just that sense of like, I know it. It's like when your kids trying to like when your kids were trying to learn to walk, like you can't catch them every time. They got to fall down, like and get back up again. And God is a father, so like he's rejoicing when I stand up straight, and he's there to take my hand and help me up again when I'm falling flat on my face. And no matter how many times I do it.
Mate, I could go down so many rabbit holes in this, but I'm going to ask you question 2, and question 2, 3, and 4 do come a bit closer together than question 1 and 2. Don't worry, you're not going to be sitting here till 3 in the morning. Question 2 is, what is the meaning of life? And like with all of the previous people that I've asked it, to the best of my knowledge, none of them have been in any way, shape, or form religious. Some of them may have been like remotely, or they just kept it to themselves, but they've answered it in a way that sort of, I don't know, like their interpretation or their perception of what they would like the meaning of life to be. I don't know if you will answer it in any different way, but if I shut up, I'll find out. Question 2 is, what is the meaning of life? And in brackets, why do some people struggle?
Okay, so for me, I say it sounds like a simple answer, but like obviously it's kind of it's huge in its outworking, and that is I believe it's to love and be loved. Like it's specifically with God like in mind, and then it kind of extrapolating out from that point. But it's to love and be loved. Like I am made, we are made to worship. The question is like, what do we worship? Right, and I guess that's why, and maybe answer that kind of question 2.A is like, why do some people struggle? Because maybe for me, and it's not meant to be condemnatory or anything like that, or judgmental in any way. It's like you're not sure because you haven't found the right object, like because anything else that you place that trust, that love, like however you want to describe it in, that's not him, is misplaced, and it you know you should be doing it, but it's like, I guess, like throwing a dart at a dartboard. Like the dart's there to be thrown, but if you keep missing the board, then like it's kind of pointless, isn't it? It's a really rubbish analogy, but like it's not fulfilling its purpose. Like if you keep throwing it into the wall, like there's really only one location for that to be landing on, right? So you can throw it all you like, keep trying to do it, trying to go through life, but there's only one place for it to truly land. I guess it might sound like a airy fairy answer or whatever, but I think it's to love and be loved. It's to accept that love and to give that love back.
And there's no right or wrong answer at all. And I like, even if I was still non-religious 100%, if I was still at that very far end of the spectrum, the ignorant fucking non-believer, I'd like to think I would still say that it's sort of, I don't care what your meaning of life is, I don't care what anyone's meaning of life is. The point in asking that question is that I don't think enough people know what their meaning of life is. So if they know what yours is, and they know what mine is, and they know what the other 8 people's are, and if they listen every time I do one of these, and they get 1,000 different people giving a slightly different version of what the meaning of life is, it might help them to find something, some way of manifesting what the meaning of life is to them. Because it isn't just to play football every Saturday, get fucked up with your mates, and then go back to a job that you hate Monday morning. Like that isn't the meaning of life, but that's the reality of a lot of people's lives. In a relationship they don't wholeheartedly enjoy, in a job that they fucking loathe, and probably even a circle of friends that they despise in a lot of ways, that they're competing with rather than competing against, rather than working with, if that makes sense. Like there's that. That's not, I don't think any of that is the healthiest way of living a life. And if you took that mythical person and tried to ask them what the meaning of life is to them, they wouldn't describe their path in life as the meaning of life, if that makes sense. I think a lot of those types of people, the people who struggle, whether it's physically or mentally, emotionally, probably more than physically, like the people who struggle with life, like, I don't think they'd be able to answer that I don't think they'd be able to answer that in a very good way, and they certainly wouldn't be able to answer it in a way that correlates with the way they actually live their life.
Yeah, I get that.
Does that make sense? So it's like, you're, and again, I quite like the fact that you've double down again. Your faith is so strong that to you the meaning of life for you, but that should be for everybody, is to love and be loved by God, potentially. Like, and that's how much you believe that is the way.
This is the way. Mandalorian quote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that the car from Back to the Future?
No, that's my sad Star Wars geek.
Oh.
Anyway, but yeah, no, but it is, and I guess for me is that's the place in where everything else overflows from, like, and that's what gives everything else the purpose, reason, whatever. So yeah.
Even if you completely 100% eliminate the religious connotations to that quote, it's still a pretty fucking good meaning of life to love people and be loved by people. Because then, as that goes into my next question 3, which is how do you want to be remembered? Well, if you act like a complete prick extremely regularly, and if people think you're a complete fucking prick, then you're going to be remembered as a complete prick. So if you don't want to be remembered for being a complete prick, don't act like one. So then if you want to be loved by people, and if you want to love the people around you, then maybe, if currently that isn't happening, maybe you need to change the circle of people you're in, or you need to change your actions and behaviors so that those who are around you fucking love you, and that you love those who are around you. Surely
I get that.
Surely that makes sense. Even if you take God and Jesus out of it 100%, like, it's still a bloody good way to try to tackle tomorrow, and then the next day, and the next day.
I think so.
I hope so. Because I'm going to look pretty silly if it's not.
Yeah.
Question 3. And question 3 carries with it the first piece of your homework, James.
Indeed.
Which I hope you have done. So question 3, how do you want to be remembered?
I want to be remembered. You're going to see a pattern here, of course. Someone who got things wrong, but had the humility to accept that, own that, learn from that. Someone who loved everyone, even if he disagreed with them. And someone like that that I love Jesus, and I've, as you've quite rightly pointed out, that I had the integrity to say it and do it. Like that was a consistent and prominent trait, and like kind of underlining of my life. Got things wrong, loved everyone, loved Christ.
Mate, I can't dispute that at all. Like, not that I would dispute it, but the thing that resonates me so much with that, and it's like when I at one stage I will be the guest on my own show, and I'm gonna get somebody else to sit in your shoes, and I'm gonna sit in my shoes, and I'll sit in your shoes, and I'm gonna be the guest, and I'm gonna give my answers to all these questions. And one of the things that is, I've got, for example, I'm going to ask you in a minute to read the 70 characters of text to put on your head, that you would put on your headstone tomorrow if you had to. And I've got 2 or 3 versions that I can't decide between. So I'm going to read out all 3, but all of them have all of them address the fact that I've fucked things up and I've learned from them. I've lost, but that's helped me to win, in that nothing I have done has been perfect. Certainly not first time. It's not even been right first time, but it's evolved and it's changed, and it's that process of learning and developing and changing that's what I've found most beneficial to me. And the reason I think that's so powerful is because if you scroll through Instagram or other social media platforms are available, but you see a highlights reel of someone's life, and you see the airbrushed, the cropped, the tinted version of what they want you to see. You don't see the real them. And if you are of an anxious or nervous or psychologically vulnerable disposition, you sit and you scroll through those feeds and you think, oh, fucking hell, she's beautiful. He's got an amazing body. This guy is so fucking strong. They're so perfect. They're so happy. Everyone is so fucking, like, so perfect, and I'm not. And I don't think that does those people any favors to be exposed to that.
Yeah, I get
And
that.
I want that person who, worst case scenario, might be fucking suicidal. They might just be mildly stressed at the other end of the spectrum. But I want that person to hear me saying, do you know what? I fucked up loads of things and I made all these mistakes and I learned and evolved, and I think I got somewhere close to, I think I might have just about broken even by the end. But it doesn't have to be this immaculate, flawless, constant upward trajectory of life like that. Just
Yeah.
doesn't happen. It's
No,
okay. It's
yeah.
okay to admit that you've got things wrong.
Yeah, I totally get that. And it is okay.
It absolutely is. What was the second one you said? What was the middle bit?
Oh, got things wrong. Loved everyone.
Is that loved everyone regardless? Is that just like your default?
Yeah, I suppose just to unpack
you,
that, it's not a it's not like I guess one could, like a liberal, careless love. It's not like I don't know everyone. Like, I suppose it's the love that determines that you treat everyone with the dignity and respect that's deserved. Like, I don't lift you up too high. I don't push you down too low. Like, I love you in the way in which I approach you. Like, you Mark, like, you are worthy of dignity. Like, every human life is in some way, shape, or form. And yeah, it's that approach. Like, it's not a familial love necessarily, although obviously for some people that would be true.
Yeah.
It's not like a romantic love. Like, there is one object of my affection in that regard, but it is, I loved everyone, because you can do things I wholeheartedly disagree. I hold opinions I wholeheartedly disagree with, and everyone is going to have an aspect of that. But it's, I treat you with dignity. I listen to you. I don't ignore you. I don't look past you. I don't think I'm better than you. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I guess that I could unpack that for days with like kind of the various aspects. But yeah, I suppose it's treating everyone with dignity and respect.
And is that unconditional, or is it just it's there until somebody justifies that they don't deserve it, or even then are you still forgiving?
Yeah, I guess it is in some ways conditional because it isn't, as I say, because the kind of love is not like love. Love is multifaceted, isn't it? So it's not familial, it's not relational necessarily, like which would be conditional. Like I can't say, and I don't want to speak for her, but I can't say that I love Sarah unconditionally because she could do things as I could do to her. So she shouldn't love
Yeah.
me unconditionally. She can do things that would destroy that love. But there is a love that comes, and for me, like prevents hate. Like and again, I think like right now, and until I think of a better word to describe it, like it is that dignity that you give to someone. Like I, you can say what you like, you can do what you like, but your life is still of value, and it's not up to me to determine whether you're right or wrong or deserving of my love.
You're
Like
like
you're just like
worthy of it. Yeah.
like that. Yeah, like that is just this kind of like this static state of everyone. Like I don't want to see you hurt. Like even when people do things abhorrently wrong, like I can't help but think like, how did you get to that point? Like what have you gone through? Like what is like? Do you know what I mean? Like it's not. That is not normal, whatever that is, but like by the majority opinion, that is not right. That is not normal. Like there's something that's gone wrong there, and I might not like the you that you are, but there's something that transcends your current personality, your current decisions, and I don't know. I'm not articulating it well enough. I don't feel like, but yeah, there's something that's greater than that. Like you might
Well,
be
the alternative is you just hate everybody regardless, and they have to almost earn that. They have to show that they're worthy of that love. Whereas you're saying like, no, it's there as a default. Yes, you can abuse it and you can lose it, but not romantic. It's not unconditional, but there is an interpretation of love that you have for every single person, that it sort of respects who they are, what they do, why they've done it, and like I don't know, sort of like an appreciation that they exist.
Yeah, I don't want to be your mate. Like, do you know what I mean?
I know.
Necessarily, but yeah, I don't want to be your mate necessarily. Like, we're not going to ever see eye to eye, but
Still love you in the context in which you're using it.
Yeah.
Right. I sort of I get it. Obviously, I'm not in your head, and
No.
I don't 100% get, but I'm pretty sure I understand where you're coming from, and I understand why you're coming from that place. The 70 characters of text. I googled it, by the way, to see how many characters, see how many words or characters you could fit on Headstone, and Google the top thing on Google said 70 characters. So I'm not counting. If you've gone a few over, I'm not going to mark you down. I won't name any names, but I think at least 3 of my 8 guests have given me 70 words, and I didn't pick them up on it. But yeah, it's pretty fuck. They're gonna have a big chunk of stone. But do you have like the Nelson's column or something? They're gonna have. But do you have the 70 characters of text that begrudgingly you would engrave on your headstone tomorrow if you had to?
Yeah, I suppose in some ways I would have gone for the got things wrong, loved everyone, loved Jesus. Like, but I don't want to give the same answer twice. And it's under the 70 characters. I guess I don't have to hit the 70. But And you're probably seeing a trend in my thinking and all the rest of it. And I don't want it to be a cliche. I really don't. But it's honestly live, laugh, love. No, I'm joking. But it's but if I could have on there, I sound needy, don't I? Right? I do. I get that. Just loved.
Oh, 5 characters.
Yeah, I'll take that all day long. The reason I say it is because
I'll take it as well if I'm paying for it, because you have to pay by letter.
Yeah. Chip, chip, chip. Like, because I was loved. Regardless of who I was, like I've not messed it up so badly that I'm not. Do you know what I mean? Like, if I can get through life with all of the things that I've royally nosed up, and like Sarah loves me. I know that. Like, she shows me, she tells me. Like, I'm confident in it, but I test it. Like, I know I do. You know what I mean? Like, but to know that I'm loved by her, for my kids, by my God, by my parents, by my friends, like, no matter how much I try and break it,
It's still there.
Yeah.
Stronger. But that's looking at those 5 letters externally, but it also works internally in that you loved them.
Yes.
Everyone. It works both ways. Like, 'cause it's not I was loved.
Yeah.
It's just, it's not I loved. It's loved. And that I pick the bones out of this. I have this. The reason I ask the question is because I don't think enough people talk about dying, and without it sort of being like a really morbid conversation. I asked Natasha the other week, I was like, would you rather come to my funeral or would you rather make me come to yours? And she was like, I'm not having this conversation with you. And but I was like, I'm interested. I want to have I just want to talk about, I want to know what's going on inside your head, of like the pros and cons. I was like, for just so everyone's aware, like, I would much rather I go first, because like as long as I go at, like, as long as it's not too soon, I was like, I did I want to go first? I think I did. I think
I see a logic in going first. Like,
I think
quite a selfish logic, but like, yeah.
Although it goes against like my paternal instincts to protect the girls and to protect my wife and to look after my castle and all that stuff, so I need to be the last man standing. I think it was like a fucking cowardice thing that I don't think I could handle going to my wife's funeral. Like, so therefore I want to go first. I think it was me being a fucking pussy, if I'm honest. But
Okay, I thoroughly appreciate that, and I think I would concur. Like,
yeah,
it's I guess it's fundamentally selfish, but I don't care. I still don't want to. Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
like you, I want to live a long and full life. I love being alive, but yeah, like, yeah, let me go first. I don't want to carry that burden.
Yeah, I think so. But like, I mean, going back to my point, is like, I don't think enough people think about dying or talk about dying, and I definitely don't think they think or talk about it in a constructive way. And what I think ends up happening is, if you go, and if you don't have like a little secret envelope that you've typed up beforehand that tells people exactly what hymns and what songs you want at your funeral, or all that sort of malarkey, because most people don't have that. You end up just getting like the normal, like your headstone will say beloved father, uncle, son, and fucking employee or whatever, like this date to this date, and that's it. And what a load of shit. Like, I don't for a second think that many people walk through graveyards looking for inspiration, but if you happened to be taking a shortcut through a graveyard and all you see is name, dates, job titles, or like family
equivalent thereof.
positions, yeah, like it's fucking boring. Imagine if you walk through and there's a fucking huge piece of marble and it just says on it loved. You have to stop and you have to try and interpret, what does that mean?
That's one of the things I do like, the kind of a little bit more like philosophical, romantic, poetic aspects. Is like there's a subjectivity about it when someone's looking at it, depending on the way they're wired and the way they think. They think, oh, like I wonder, like, and kind of extrapolating.
Does that mean he was loved by his family? Well, but it also means he loved other people, and like it's hopefully sparks like an internal conversation, like what the fuck does that mean? And then hopefully the next step from that is, in trying to decipher what that means, you might add something to the way you live, your actions, your behaviors, and it might, do you know what I mean? Like that's what I hope comes from this question, that more people probably put a bit of thought into it. And then also comes back to my previous question, like, well, how do you want to be remembered? And if you want to be remembered in a certain way, and if you want to be able to say this on your headstone and have this cool philosophical, like thought-provoking, like stamp that's going to be there forever, maybe you need to fucking change
now.
Maybe you need to change a few things and do a few things differently that will allow all of that to be true and to happen. And I don't know, I might be 100% wrong, and I'm happy to be wrong. I'm fucking wrong about most things, but I just, the more sort of people that I think start to have these conversations with themselves, the better. I think. I hope.
Yeah, man. No, it's. I think it's healthy. Like, whatever your outlook and your worldview is, normalizing something that is entirely heartbreaking, but actually entirely normal by definition of the fact that it happens to everybody.
Yeah,
it's
going to happen.
Yeah.
Hopefully not imminently.
Indeed.
But if it does, like, have you put some things in place to sort of to deal with that? I whether that's through, I don't know, just through the way you are, or have you made it clear to other people that they understand this is what I want? I don't know. Fuck knows. But mate, loved. Like, that's the first time someone has read out the text on their headstone that I've been able to recite back to them word for word very easily without having to write it down. So for that, I'm very appreciative.
Glad I could be of service.
Mate, last question. Regrets.
Plenty.
I hate it when people say, I don't have a single regret. And the reason I ask this question, and the reason I don't want to believe or accept that people don't have regrets, is because, again, I refuse to believe that it's just me that regrets fucking shitloads of things. Like, I don't allow things I regret to ruin my future.
That's
I'm aware that there's a line in the sand. It can't be changed, but I can still regret it happening and learn from it you never lose, you win or learn. Like I can still apply that principle to make sure that I either do it less often or eliminate it entirely, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
give me a couple of key regrets, if you've got that many.
No, I haven't. Because of some of the other homework that we get to, like I've been reflecting. And so when I thought about it, the thing that came to mind, and I've got plenty more, and I guess to my shame, they're not necessarily all coming to mind, so I can almost confess them aloud and demonstrate that I am regretful. But the thing that came to mind during me doing the homework was I effectively moved out of my parents' house twice, like in kind of quick succession. And like when I started working on holiday park, and I came back after that, and then I moved out and I moved into Sarah's parents. On both occasions, and it's particularly towards my mum, like on both occasions, I was incredibly selfish and immature about it. Like there was no preamble, there was no forewarning. It was literally on the day, as it were. Might not have been quite on the day. Certainly the first one was like, this is what I'm doing. And I just went and done it.
Mm.
And with the benefit of hindsight and seeing that and accepting that as well, it was incredibly selfish. And I think I did my mum quite a bit of damage.
Do you think
the flippancy in which I made these decisions, like there was no care or consideration, like I was her son, and she and my dad had obviously sacrificed in so many ways for me to have what I had and grow up in the way that I did, and it could have most certainly, and I guess in some ways it was interpreted as a big up yours. It wasn't the intention, but that's not good enough either, because there was no intention, because there was no care. Do you know what I mean? There was no thought. And I suppose it's having kids now that I realise, like how impactful that could have been, and I just wish I could have had a do-over on that.
That's what I was just going to say. I was like, does fatherhood make you look at those things differently, and then where do you stop? You go, oh fuck me, go all through my childhood and teenage years, and you're like, Jesus Christ, like I think I owe a few apologies.
Yeah. Like, so it's those ill thought out, ill considered decisions that you just move with, and then you're like, it flies in the face of every you say about, like, if you want to be remembered like this, blah blah blah, like there needs to be integrity in the way that you live right now for that to be the case. Well, it's those times in those things that flies in the face, and there's many and more of those, of course there is, that flies in the face of that desire to be remembered in a certain way, to be able to describe myself as being this person, but I'm not always that person. And it's those times that I regret the most, because I feel like I've let myself down and I've let the people down, like around me, who I care for the most.
And then, would I be right in assuming that when your mum listens to this, that won't be the first time she hears you say that? Like, is this a resolved matter? Like, have you had the conversation with her?
Yeah, I think so.
In adulthood, as it were, like that you've realised?
But yes, I have, but like only relatively recently. Like when you look at it, and I guess it might still even come as a surprise, because this is obviously very definitive, very explicit, with no preamble. Like, do you know what I mean? You can find yourself apologising for things in the midst of like more deep and meaningful conversations with the person that you're apologising for. It's not that it gets lost. It might just not be punctuated in the same way of just going boom. Yeah. And I suppose it's one of the things I'm more comfortable in talking about. There are like other regrets that I'm not, that I would have apologised. Things I've caused heartache, I call Sarah or whatever. That I hope in the fullness of time, and nothing really comes to mind at the moment that I haven't, that I'm living with as a regret that I would want an opportunity to do again, that I haven't talked about. Yeah.
On that sort of like, again, I've said it before in this conversation, and I've said it in every time I've had this conversation with other people, is that I cannot fathom that a person who's willing to stand and say, I have got no regrets. If I had my time again, I would do nothing differently. I cannot fathom that that's true. And I even if it's just a minor thing, like, we all have got things that we wish we had done a little bit differently. The power of hindsight is a wonderful thing, and fuck me if you add maturity onto that, which I'm trying to dabble in a little bit, but not too much. Then it doesn't take long before you look back at your teenage self, but even going through my 20s, 30s, and my 40s, although I'm only about 18 months into my 40s, you're never going to be short of things where you're like, oh, I regret that. I probably shouldn't have done that. And it comes back to me of that, like, you haven't lost, you've either won or you learned. So if you go, oh, I regret that, I still, 20 years on, you still regret not asking that girl out, or still regret stealing that thing from the tuck shop or whatever. I was like, fuck me, now you're affecting your future. You're harnessing your potential because you're giving too much attention and focus to something that happened so long ago. Don't ruin your future over it, but you can still healthily regret doing something and use that as fuel and ammunition to not allow that thing to happen ever again. Or best case scenario, don't let it happen as often. Like, it depends how bad or how often the thing is. Like I don't know, you don't have to have fucking killed somebody and like, oh yeah, I better not let that happen too often. Like, it could be something minuscule that you regret. It doesn't have to be like a massively terrible thing. But I think everybody, if they're honest with themselves when nobody's fucking looking and listening, I think everybody will regret something to some degree. So therefore, if this podcast was millions of fucking listeners because I'm famous and I've only got famous people on, I go and I'm interviewing fucking Michael Barrymore or Davina McCall, and what do you regret? I don't regret a single thing. If I had my time again, I'd do it all as the same, and blah blah blah. I was like, I don't think that fucking helps normal, real people to hear that, because they're sitting there going, oh, fuck me, well, I regret this, I regret that from last week, I regret this from yesterday, I did this 10 minutes ago that I regret. And to then hear bullshit of people saying, oh, I don't regret a single thing, I don't think it does anybody any favors. And I would much rather hear like a genuine, honest answer like that is personal, and it's none of our fucking business, but you've shared it anyway. And I just think it's so much more powerful that someone then can listen to it and go, oh, maybe it's not so bad that I regret stuff, and maybe I'll listen to Mark eventually, I can regret it and not let it ruin tomorrow and next week, etc.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is the key.
Yeah, it's probably done enough damage at the time.
Absolutely.
Like, let it motivate you to ask for forgiveness, hopefully receive forgiveness, and then learn from it and limit.
Try not to do it again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
That reminds me, I've got to stop pissing in the sink. I'll write that down. Right, James, it's very nearly bedtime. Last bit of homework, the letter.
Yep.
So anyone who's not listened before, I ask every guest to write a letter. I then even more awkwardly ask them to read it out. The letter can be to anybody, dead or alive. It can be based in the past, present, or the future. It can be to themselves. It can be to somebody else. Blah 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 blah. And I believe you let the cat slip a little bit earlier on when you said the letter was to yourself. Did I hear you say it was to your 18-year-old self?
It is to my 18-year-old self, indeed, because I am that much of a narcissist.
So the context to that is that was pre-religious James.
Yeah. It was pre-fundamental changes in my life, and I suppose rather conveniently at this point, and kind of I suppose coincidentally at this point, I'm 36, so
Halfway.
So it was like halfway through to where I am. I've lived that time again, but potentially with a far different perspective than I did for the years prior.
Well, for the next however long it takes, I will let you speak to 18-year-old James.
No,
did he have a cool beard and like a trainer fetish?
The trainer fetish, the beard was in its infancy, but yeah, I've always been. I appreciate this is not true anymore, and I'm clinging on to things that once were. But I've always been relatively baby faced. So as soon as I could grow a beard, I did. I had a beard before it was cool to have a beard, but just because I didn't want to look like a child anymore. All right, shall I crack on,
mate? The stage is yours. Fire away.
Right. Try and keep it together, eh? Dear James,
if you don't, you'll be in good company because I don't think anyone has yet. Okay. Least of all me.
Dear James, shortly after you receive this letter, you'll start to feel like you're running headfirst into a brick wall. You don't quite understand it yet, but your mental and physical health is running down. Frankly, the physical health part isn't a huge problem because you're 18 and can survive better than you ever will at 36 with no sleep and too much bad living. The mental health thing isn't that generous. You've been having panic attacks for a while now and they proper suck, but you're going to learn to live with them. And relatively speaking, you'll just about see the back of them in not too long a time. The thing is, buddy, you lack purpose and direction, and this is a problem. Living and working on a holiday park is bloody awesome, but before too long, it takes its toll. You're hugely social and actually quite introverted, but that FOMO is real, and despite needing time by yourself, you will insist on keeping on going to everything and being the last to leave. This problem, unfortunately, is yet to be resolved. I know you're rather well acquainted with drugs, but now binge drinking is your recreation of choice, and before too long, that nasty, insipid, and rather low quality white powder will become a dominant feature. You're soon going to work out that this is a bit of a problem when you find yourself doing it at 4 o'clock in the afternoon before going to lifeguard training. Unfortunately, because you're still a proper numpty, even though you know it to be a problem, you're going to crash a few relationships before you really do wake up to it sucking the life out of you. In all honesty, 36-year-old you thinks 18-year-old you is a bit of a div. You are the most selfish person you have ever had the unfortunate pleasure of meeting. You're a bad friend, a distant son, an ignorant team member, and a bloody awful boyfriend. Although that final point is probably not such a bad thing for the minute, but more on that later. Now, don't get me wrong, you keep up the pretense of being generous of heart and caring, and by some estimations, you're not the down and out you could be. You're probably depressed, and you most certainly don't have the best of prospects. But your future is more wonderful, more full of hope, love, and blessing than you could ever think possible. I'm not writing to you from a position of superiority. I am you, not better necessarily, but different, very, very different. In fact, I often say 18-year-old you would wonder where on earth 36-year-old you came from. I will tell you a bit about that. Having lived your life all over again 18 years later, one of my biggest regrets is that I lived like you for so long. I love you. I just wish you loved you a little bit more. Not in a selfish, self-seeking way. You are already totally nailing that. But in the life has so much for you, you have so much more to give kind of way. Pretty soon your life is going to change, mate. You will already be a lifeguard at this moment. I can tell you now it's more than a job. 18 years later, you'll still be enjoying your career in the sector. Your roles have changed and you'll find yourself having the opportunity to lead people and organisations, helping them to be their best, to enjoy rewarding careers, to learn to be themselves in all situations and to serve their communities. You will achieve more than you ever thought you could. Ironically, your desire to leave school and train to become a PE teacher that you quickly abandoned in favour of earning money will in part become a reality, or at least elements of it. The environment is a bit different, but it's still sport and physical activity based, and you're still privileged enough to support people's learning. But now it's adults, not young people. It's awesome. You're going to love it. Even the worst of it is a great privilege to be a part of. But this isn't the best bit. One day soon, there will be a rather attractive young lady doing handstands in the pool. Lifeguarding is not the glamorous thing that Baywatch would lead you to believe, but there are still some perks of the job. Your decided lack of confidence will result in you not talking to her, although you really wanted to. But thanks to a frustrated and irritated friend and a very confident woman, you will get to know her and you will fall in love. But just a quick note on that last part. When you tell her you love her, it'll be really early doors, you soppy git. And she'll give you the opportunity to take it back. Don't. I didn't. Stick to your guns because you'll be saying that to her every day for the rest of your life. Sarah is, by anyone's standards, the best of women. She's your sunshine, your best friend, and she's unbelievably gorgeous. You, my friend, will fall on your feet. She will bring out the best in you. She will encourage you, forgive you, and hold you to the highest of standards. There is something very different about her. All of those aspects I've listed are phenomenal, but there is something else. She's a Christian. Not a Christian in the, I went to Harvest Festival at church once and live in the UK, so of course I'm a Christian. No, she's a devoted, compassionate, and passionate follower of Jesus. Why is she dating you? God only knows. But she is, and your life, that life without purpose, that life of selfish living, self-seeking solitude, is going to be transformed for good. You'll be pleased that you failed as a boyfriend before, because it means that you met Sarah and she is not one to tolerate you not being your best. On the 20th of May 2007, you'll visit her church, where her dad is the pastor, by the way. Don't worry, he's an easygoing and wonderful guy, no stereotypes here. And you will also be compelled to stand in response to the invitation to follow Jesus that you cannot resist, and will be convinced that there is someone so much greater than you that is leading you to give yourself to a new way of living. Honestly, where you are right now, you probably think that this is the most ludicrous of things, and it kind of is. So you know, Jesus loves everyone, even people like you. You're going to be baptized on your 21st birthday. No real significance here, but it's a very different 21st birthday than the one that you may have imagined for yourself. Living for Jesus is hard, but you will always be secure. You have a Father in heaven who loves you with a perfect love. It's probably cliche to say, but you and Sarah will adventure for Christ for the rest of your life. Sometimes willingly, sometimes kicking and screaming. Although you may doubt, he never doubts you, never leaves you, and he will never forsake you. You'll be married in 2010. You will live in a pokey flat with bars on the windows, and you will be happy about it. Sadly, and honestly, sadly doesn't cut it, but I'm not sure I can dwell too long here to think of the best word to describe it. So, sadly, in July of 2011, Sarah will get a headache. It's bad. It's really bad. We think it's a migraine, but she loses around a quarter of her field of vision. After being admitted to King's, she'll be placed on the stroke ward, as this seems the most likely source of the headache and sight loss. After lots of tests, CAT scans, and an MRI, some profoundly awkward and inappropriate doctor will tell her that she has multiple sclerosis. You don't really know what that is, but you know it isn't great. Scans show lesions all over her brain where this terrible and degenerative condition has begun to attack her and forever rob her of a normal life. After 18 months of marriage at the ages of 22 and 23 respectively, you do not expect to have the sickness and in health part of your vows tested. But remember, never forget, you are loved, and your God will never leave you, never forsake you. Life is different now. The once obvious idea of having children is in question. A rich and rewarding career for Sarah is now likely a thing of the past, and you will both have to make tough choices and make uncountable allowances in the way that you live. Sarah is a mighty woman. She has a strength that you wish you could have for yourself. The way she copes with her condition, the faith that she has throughout will always be a source of strength and encouragement to you. She is simply amazing. And you know what? Even in the worst of it, you will see God making good on his promises to work all things. And I really mean all things together for good. All of this is made infinitely easier by being blessed with a phenomenal family, wonderful friends, and a faith-filled, loving church family in New Hope. You are rich. Along with Sarah came her family, and what a family it is. Of course, when Sarah got you, she got your lot as well. Mum and Dad are doing well, and Matt is one of your best friends. Dad gets cancer, but he goes through it and remains as physically and strong as ever. You know your family, though, so I won't dwell here for too long. Sarah's family are wonderful. They take you in and take you on as one of their own. There is no sense of being an in-law here, simply a brother and a son. John and Linda, your parents-in-law, are most certainly a second set of parents. How blessed you are, my boy. Linda is one of a kind. The love that she shows you is second to none, and she'll be your greatest advocate outside of Sarah. As you learn to walk with God, she will walk with you every step of the way. From that first step of faith to becoming a pastor and a preacher, yeah, that happened, to the birth of your boys, she is for you, and you will have a love for her that words cannot quite describe. You will wind her up, and she will wind you up. But sadly, it won't last forever, because nothing really does. Linda will be diagnosed with cancer almost precisely 2 weeks after your first son, Jax, is born. The prognosis is crap, but Linda is stronger than it. There is terrible suffering and yet glorious joy. Despite the outlook, Linda will see more wonderful grandchildren born, including your second son, Ezra. It is with regret that I write and tell you that Linda passed away a little under a year ago, and the wound is as open and painful today as it was on the day it happened. She cannot be replaced, and she certainly won't be forgotten. The impact she has made on you will last for eternity, and I delight that she lives on through Sarah, Jax, and Ezra. You'll be forever grateful that your wonderful boys had the joy and pleasure of starting life with all four grandparents when you did not. Their love and input into them has done them good. The Bible tells us to raise children in the way that they should go, and they will not depart from it. Knowing that their grandparents have a hand in this is a great joy. About these boys of yours. What was once potentially never going to happen now has happened. My word, has it happened. As I write this letter to you, Jax is now 5 and Ezra is 2. Just to explain the Jax thing, he is, as you would expect, actually called James. He is proudly the 10th James Duncan, but we needed to know him as something else, right? It would be confusing otherwise. Sarah came up with Jax as the Roman numeral for 10, is X, so it seemed to fit. I was secretly really excited about it, as Jax Teller is the main protagonist from the Sons of Anarchy TV show. Keep your eye out for that. It's not out yet. The boys are amazing. Being a parent is the hardest thing you have ever done, but it's also the best. They will beat you on a daily basis, and although you may protest, you secretly love it. Look forward to meeting them. They are the sum total of yours and Sarah's relationship, and a wonderful gift of grace. So what else can I say? You're married to the most amazing woman. You have 2 gorgeous boys, a wonderful family, and a fantastic group of friends. You're part of a wonderful church. You have a job you love, a gorgeous home, and most wonderful thing of all is that you are kept safe in the strong arms of the God who loves you. This letter is a letter of thanksgiving. I want to give God all the glory for the life that you have already lived and still have to live. It's thanksgiving to parents who raised you well, a family that took you in as one of their own, to a church that has discipled you and cared for you, and to a wife and sons who love you for being you, even when that's hard. Know this, as you sit here at 36, you will know that even in the worst of situations, in the most joyful of times, you're exactly where you need to be, and you're doing exactly what He created you to do. I don't despise who you are at 18, but I'm bloody glad that your life changed. The trajectory that you are on doesn't look to be heading to where it is now. You are without purpose, lost and lacking in joy, but things change. Life changes. Go with it. Don't push against it. Don't avoid the bad things or the difficult things. You'll have plenty of regrets, but you will learn, you will grow, and you will experience a life of love beyond your wildest dreams. Life is hard, no doubt, but my word, is it good. We're done.
I never know what to say at this point. I sort of I look forward to this point so much, but then I dread it so much at the same time, because it's sort of, when I said earlier about how I want this to be a conversation, not an interview. I want us to talk and discuss, and for me to be as part of the conversation, as much of a part of the conversation as you are. And then obviously listening to that, which I don't know, I wasn't timing it, but it was fucking long, and every single word of it was brilliant. Mate, if it had been 100 times longer, I could have listened to it till the sun came up. But it's then so difficult to try to not just be a spectator. Every time I sit here like that, and I fucking cry my eyes out listening to it, and then I'm like, oh fuck, now I need to fucking talk, and I need to try and be remotely interesting, or I need to sort of come out with some profound reflective analysis of what's just happened. And in reality, the best thing is probably for me to just cut it, and that was the end. But I don't know, I prefer to go down these waffly dead ends where they're like little cul-de-sacs. If 18-year-old James Duncan had been sitting at the top of his lifeguard tower and someone slipped that in his pocket and he read it, how do you think that would have gone down? Like, would it have been a proverbial slap in the face of like the self-deprecation in there, of the path he was treading, and the behaviors that he was embarking on? Would it have been a slap in the face to change, or would he have been, would he have thought it was a load of bollocks, of all the things you told him that he's going to experience and be exposed to and learn to love?
I think I'd like to think in some ways that it would have been like a bit of a kind of a slap in the face, or like a being pulled up short, as it were, because I think I don't think I'm confident enough. I wouldn't have articulated it that way, but like it weren't right. Like, do you know what I mean? I knew I was all over the place. Kind of.
But you sort of, because look, right and wrong are probably not the right words, but we all know right from wrong. We know constructive behavior from destructive behavior. Like, it doesn't take a genius to work out that there's a difference between the red pill and the blue pill, or whatever way you look at it. So, but also at the same time, and I've been in similar boats myself, where the denial or the unwillingness to admit it then becomes the perpetual demise, like where you sort of you double down and refuse to accept it almost. There's 100%, excuse me, an element of that, and then you can see how easily, when someone's gone a couple of steps down that path, how easy it is to continue. Really fucking difficult to drag yourself out into the opposite direction.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. There is a gulf between knowledge of, or an awareness of your shortcomings, whatever they may be, and the action to address them. Like, it is far easier to bury your head in the sand. And I guess that's the way I'm probably inclined, and I have to work really hard. It's one of the things that Sarah's taught me a lot about, was hence why I could hear her as I was writing parts of that, like, because no one takes joy in having the tough conversations. Like, that's not a pleasure for anyone, but she's really taught me about the value of doing that, and like doing that with myself as well. Like, that's almost the hardest, because you're not accountable to anyone, are you? Like, if you don't do it, it's only you who knows.
But then where's the integrity? That's the definition of integrity, is you can convince yourself, or you can tell other people anything you like. When you lay in bed at night and there's not a sound to be heard, like, can you genuinely tell yourself that you made the best decisions for the best reasons, like, or not? And integrity is a massive thing. Like, there's I think this will be the last question that I ask you, I promise. For me, asking people to write that letter with the vagueness that I ask them to write it, and then to read it out with the flippancy, if that's even a word, that I ask them to read it out, that's like, it's so fucking easy. But like, from your end, like, what are the difficulties in writing that? Are there difficulties in writing that? And then, do you get to a point where initially you're like, oh, I'm only going to divulge this amount, and then does it, before you know it, you've fucking opened up a can of worms? Or what is, from your point of view, what's the thought process from your end when you're asked to do that and then carry out a task like that?
I suppose it certainly wouldn't have been my normal inclination, but over the years I've learned to be self-reflective, like, because I don't think that comes easy. Like, that is a learned skill. Like, that is not a inherent trait, because it's difficult to do. So for me, when you actually pitched that, I was like, this is a really good opportunity. I didn't really know, like, I knew where my starting point was, but I didn't know where it was going to go, or what was going to draw my attention, like, during that reflection. So that was really interesting to kind of go through that journey. That was the most eye-opening thing, really, was like, and part of that reflection that continues is asking myself, okay, right, what is there anything, like, if that's the stuff that's come to mind, is there anything that I still need to deal with that I haven't? That remains to be seen. Oh, I'll update you on that at some point.
in series 2, when if you come back on for a second show. And then, had you not have written that letter to 18-year-old James, was there any debate? Were you tossing up between an alternative, or was
No,
that you
was that just
straight away? That was
that way. I knew that's where that was. As I said, I've often used it as an analogy, but like in a more of a humorous, like, oh my goodness, like, I'm a very different kind of guy with a different like very different outlook to what 18-year-old me was. Just so this was like that opportunity to go. So what does that actually mean? Like, what do I actually mean when I like jokingly make that remark? Let's turn that remark into, let's put some meat on the bones to that.
Yeah.
Because it's actually not that funny in some ways. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's like there's a lot to contend with.
Yeah. Well, I smirked a few times, but that was more just at your sort of sarcastic humour that was scattered in there. I think there was the more tears than laughter. And when I just had another question that I was going to ask you as well. Oh, my mind's gone blank when I started talking, but it was a really fucking good one. Oh my God, what the fuck was it? Oh yeah. I was like, again, this is an unanswerable question, but it ties in with a few things we've touched on, where you were talking about God, Jesus, and I was talking about things like fate and making your own luck and sort of like my poor man's version of what you were saying. But to what extent do you think that an 18-year-old James needs to be told those things, or needs to figure them out for themselves? And like, is there a balance between the two? Are you banging your head against the wall trying to tell an 18-year-old the things that you were telling the 18-year-old self, but if you tell them it and then they make the changes, are they making the changes for the right reason? It's sort of like a nature nurture, chicken and an egg question that I've got no fucking idea if there's even an answer. But like, did you have to figure them things out for yourself for them to really make the impact that they have in you as a person?
Yeah, I think you do. I don't think it's not just a downloading of information. I guess in my mind it was probably an encouragement in no matter how bleak it may seem, like, get what you can out of it. Like, it's none. I would never ever, talk about like Sarah and her MS diagnosis. There is no way of making that okay. But I'm damn sure not gonna have it all as loss. Might not be the right way of describing it, but do you know what I mean? Like, it's what are we appreciating more as a result of it?
Yeah.
Like, don't like bring the good from the bad. Like, I'm not having it.
What benefit is it bringing to the table? Like, what is it teaching us?
Yeah, I'm not having it. rob us blind.
Mm.
Like we'll take stuff back from it. You know what I mean? Like, and that I guess you can find that against any challenge or persecution or trial that you go through. It's like I'm not rolling over and playing dead on this one. Like, if there's something to learn, if there's something to get, is there's a way of growing as a result of it. Like, I mean, me and Sarah are stronger in our relationship because of it. Yeah, I reckon so. Can I, being very like kind of selfish, just from my own experience from it, does it enable me to pastor people better? Yeah, it probably does. Like, I've gone through
Is that selfish though?
Yeah, no, I mean, sorry, selfish from a, like, it's Sarah's condition, like our shared experience. So she's got her things from it, but like my personal thing is like we can, I don't know, that ability to empathize, sympathize, like, or is to do that. Would I rather have not gone through it? Yeah, of course, absolutely. Do you know what I mean? Would I rather have not have her not struggling through it? No. But if I can use that to understand someone else and their problems better, to help them get to, like, I think we're, in all things considered, not without issue, we're in a good place. So how can we lean into that and potentially, God willing, help other people find their security, find their joy, even in the midst of suffering and difficulty. It's never okay. But we're going to rob stuff back from it.
Mate, however I phrase this, it will pale into significance for how much I mean it. But I genuinely appreciate so much, like, how open and honest and like the depth to which you've talked about very personal issues and just your entire experience, that I'm sure you've had the piss taken out of you for it more times than you've probably had hot dinners. Like, I don't doubt that for a second. And I was probably one of those pricks at some point along the path that would have thought it was funny to make a joke. I've been there and I've done it. Like, I'm not going to profess that I haven't, but I as I said at the start, is a subject that I just, it interests me and it intrigues me, and I just, like, the more attention I give it, the more I like, the more convinced I am that there is something there. Like, most nights when I live right near the sea, we've got no light pollution. I let the dog outside. I go and stand and have a piss on the gravel, and you can see the fucking stars from one horizon to the other 9 nights out of 10. And I sort of stand there pissing into the garden thinking, like, fucking gotta be something. There's got to be, in infinite fucking distance, there's got to be another planet that's got people on it, or there's got to be other things out there, whether they're physical or whether they're spiritual, whether they're metaphorical. Like, it cannot be that in such a fucking vast chasm of stuff that we're the only fucking tiny little pinprick of a dot that exists, that has beings on it. And I'm not intelligent enough to fucking get my head around the scale of the universe or anything else, but I'm more convinced than ever that there's something other than just Earth and the planet that we're on. And as I said, with Jamie dying was like a massive catalyst for me to sort of question my own mortality, because I'd been invincible for 20 years, like literally invincible. Now all of a sudden I'm very fucking mortal, and I'm aware of that massively, and the impact that my mortality then has on those around me, namely wife, kids, and immediate family members. And so it's sort of like again, you've got answers, I don't, but you've definitely given me some snippets of answers that make sense with a lot of the stuff that I've already sort of built myself, if that makes sense. I don't know if I'm ready to stand up yet, but
I have to apologise. I've got a visitor.
have you?
Yeah.
Not woken up anyone, have we?
No, you shouldn't be awake. Stay there. Apologies.
Mate, do not apologise. Anyway, it was my long-winded way of just thanking you for your time more than anything. And I started off, the first one I did was about an hour and a half, and then they've got 20-30 minutes longer every time. And I made a point to myself to say, when I said I got the footballs on, I was like, I'll see if I can wrap this up in like an hour and a half, 2 hours, while the football's on. And now it's probably hit 4 hours. It's fucking midnight. But yeah, mate, I've
enjoyed it.
Mate, I genuinely appreciate your time. I can't wait to listen back to it. And yeah, I'm sure we'll chat again sometime soon.
Absolutely, mate.
In the future.
It's been an absolute pleasure. I do find it a real privilege. Thank you.
No, you're welcome. Pleasure's all mine. Cheers, James.
Happy days. God bless you later, mate.
Good night, mate. Bye-bye.
Right.